Good for you.
1 minute to air. The live stream has started.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I haven't met you before. Not names you need. Comments about that site.
I didn't even bring a bottle of water. How about the hot one?
Look in front of that.
We have it? Okay, we have everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Steve.
Good evening and welcome to the Durham Planning Commission. The members of the Durham Planning Commission are appointed by the City Council and the County Board of Commissioners to make recommendations to elected officials. We emphasize that the elected officials have the final say on any issue before us tonight. While this meeting is being conducted in person, it is also accessible using Zoom, the virtual platform. The virtual meeting platform, in the virtual meeting platform, I gotta start over. Public participants do not have any ability to talk or to be seen on video by default. In order to maintain meeting decorum, a discernible record of the meeting, the chat function has been disabled. For those attending in person, if you plan to speak on the agenda item tonight, please go to the table to my left and sign up to speak. When speaking, please state your name and your address clearly when you come to the podium. Please speak directly into the microphone. If you are attending the meeting virtually, you will be given the ability to speak at the appropriate time. If you have pre-registered, your name will be called so you can make your comments, just like an in-person public hearing. You may also call into the meeting tonight by dialing 1-301-715-8592. If you call in during the meeting time, you will need to wait until the particular public hearing you are interested in starts. After all of the pre-registered speakers have shared their comments, I will ask if there is anyone else wishing to speak. At that point, you will need to digitally raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone. And when recognized, state your name and address before making your comments. Did you all want to make the decorum before I go any further?
Yeah, do you want to take roll call vote and then we'll do decorum?
Okay, all right. We have a lengthy agenda tonight. Therefore, time will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker during the public hearing. Commissioners, I also ask for your cooperation and limit your questions or comments that will offer new or unique thoughts to the case, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. All motions are stated in the affirmative, so if a motion fails or ties, the recommendation is for denial. Finally, I ask everyone here, the commission members, the staff, and the public to conduct themselves in a courteous and respectful manner. If someone fails to act in that manner, the chair will ask the offending person or persons to leave the meeting until such time they regain personal control. If decorum fails to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until a genuine commitment to act respectful and courteous to others is observed. Thank you, everyone. Can we have the roll call?
Chair Mondolia has an excused absence tonight. Vice Chair Cameron.
Here.
Commissioner Baker has an excused absence tonight. Commissioner Cutright.
Here.
Commissioner Chagaris.
Here.
Commissioner McIver.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Present.
Commissioner Cease has an excused absence tonight. Commissioner Trapp.
Here.
Commissioner Valentine.
Here.
Commissioner Carmen Williams has an excused absence tonight. Commissioner Zuri Williams.
Here.
We have a quorum. All right, thank you. Proceed with your statement.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cameron. Staff would like to daylight the rules of decorum that exist that are used to govern time, place, and manner of expression to ensure that responsiveness to your concerns are heard as the public. In support of and respect for an open, fair, and informed decision-making process, staff would like to remind Planning Commission attendees that the same rules for decorum that apply to City Council meetings apply to Planning Commission. We're going to cover these quickly today and ensure in the future that they are included in the agenda as a link. So in support of and respect for an open and fair and informed decision-making process, staff and the Planning Commission recognize that civil, respectful, and courteous discourse and behavior are conducive to the democratic and harmonious airing of concerns and decision-making, that uncivil discourse and or discourteous and inappropriate behavior have a negative impact on the character and productivity of the decision-making process. In an effort to preserve the intent of open government and maintain a positive environment for citizen input and Planning Commission decision-making, the following rules of decorum have been established. Compliance with these rules is expected and appreciated. The rules of decorum will be included in the agenda going forward and be referenced at the beginning of each Planning Commission meeting by the presiding officer. A written list of these rules of decorum is printed and also is available on the Planning Commission website. The rules of decorum are as follows. All community members may participate in the public process. The chair serves as the presiding officer of the Planning Commission, and the vice chair serves in the chair's absence. Citizens may speak only to the matter for which they signed up for, and in the case of public hearings, those matters which have been advertised and placed on the Planning Commission meeting agenda. Citizens are encouraged to prepare remarks in advance for submission for the public record. Prepared remarks should be submitted to the Planning Department either prior to the start of the meeting or after their comments have been delivered. Speakers will conduct themselves in a civil and respectful manner at all times. Speakers will address the presiding officer. Each speaker is allocated 2 minutes to speak. This time allotment may be reduced by the presiding officer. A speaker may not share or relinquish any of the remaining time that they have to another speaker. Speakers are only allowed to speak one time during the public comment period per item. Questions to planning commissioners or to city staff will be facilitated by the presiding officer. Speakers should remember to state their name and address as they speak, make an effort to speak clearly into the microphone, and speak succinctly. Speakers will refrain from the use of obscene language, fighting words likely to incite violence from the individuals to whom the words are addressed, or other language which is disruptive to the orderly and fair progress of discussion at this meeting. Speakers will refrain from making comments of a personal nature regarding others. Name calling and or obscenity is forbidden. Shouting, yelling, and screaming is forbidden. Public hearing attendees will refrain from commenting, shouting, booing, clapping, stomping their feet, or other inappropriate or disruptive behavior. Public hearing attendees should refrain from private conversations during the meetings, and if need to come and go during the meeting, leaving in as least disruptive manner as possible. Exhibits, displays, and visual aids used in connection with the presentations to the Planning Commission are permitted. However, videos are not permitted. Once a public hearing is closed, the speaker may only speak if the chair or presiding officer calls on that speaker. A reminder that the same rules apply to community members and community speakers as they do to applicants. One additional rule of decorum for applicants is that the applicant may make a presentation of support of their project. Applicants may also reserve time for rebuttal or to answer questions from the original time allotment as allowed by the presiding officer. Again, these rules of decorum are for the safe and effective governance of both the community in their participation and the Planning Commission decision-making process, and these rules of decorum are posted on the Planning Commission website. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the first item on the agenda, approval of the minutes and the consistency statements from the April 11th, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion for approval. Second.
It's been moved. Look, I gotta have these names in front of me. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. There are no adjustments to the agenda, I don't believe, so we can go right into the first case. Case Z 22-00057, 2309 and 2315 Sparger Road.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cameron and Honorable Commissioners, my name is Andy Lester with the Planning Department. This case is Z22-00057, 2309 and 2315 Sparger Road for proposed zoning map change.
Not working.
The property is located at 2309 and 2315 Sparger Road, totaling 5.08 acres. The existing zoning is office institutional with a development plan. The applicant is proposing a zoning to commercial general with a textual development plan excluding indoor firing ranges and nightclub or bar. The existing future land use map designation is commercial. The proposed commercial general with a textual development plan is consistent with the commercial flume designation. The site does lie within the Eno River District B watershed protection overlay. The existing zoning is office. The site is located at the commercial intersection of Sparger Road and Hillsborough Road and surrounded by residential suburban 20, commercial neighborhood, and commercial center zoning districts. The aerial map shows the general location of the project. It is located on the northwest quadrant of Sparger Road and Hillsborough intersection. To the north and west are single-family dwellings. To the east and south, the intersection is composed of commercial and non-residential uses. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on October 27, 2022. 9 community members were in attendance. A second meeting was also held on March 28, 2023, and 5 members were in attendance to that. 2 social pinpoint comments have been received in relation to this case, with concerns regarding the wide range of uses allowed on the site and the current location of the driveway entrance along Sparger Road. Staff determines this request is consistent with the flume, the comprehensive plan, and other adopted ordinances and policies. The proposal is in the public interest due to the conformance of the commercial general zoning district on a property that is surrounded by similar zoning districts and designated commercial on the future land use map. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant ready to present?
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission. Pam Porter with TMTLA Associates, 5011 South Park Drive in Durham. Thank you, Andy, for the presentation. Just want a quick overview on this. The purpose of the rezoning is simply to expand the uses for the owner. The owners are here and can answer any questions you may have, but they really want to increase the leasing pool for their property. That's it. There's no plan to tear the building down and redevelop anything. There's no plan to expand the building. They have a current tenant, and they just want to, at some point when that tenant leaves, have a wider range of possible tenants. We have conditioned out firing range as well as bar and nightclub. Those seem like things that were not going to be compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhood. We had 2 neighborhood meetings. The first one, there were 7 folks that attended. The second one, there were 5. There were 2 concerns that were noted. One was regarding lighting. There were some lights added for safety, and the owner did note that he would evaluate the lights to see if they were shining too bright and would address that with the neighbor that had that concern. And there was also concerns with traffic on Sparger Road. When we initially submitted this, the new text change for adding conditions other than uses had not been passed, but since then, we've added some conditions related to traffic. I'm happy to go over those if you have not seen them, but basically we're waiting on timing from DOT to figure out how to finalize those, but we are going to address some concerns with traffic that the neighbors had. It was reiterated at the neighborhood meeting that the neighbors were excited that we were not going to do any nightclub or sports bar use here. There's a bar that's adjacent to the site that I guess gets quite loud, and the neighbors are not happy. So they were pleased that we were conditioning that out. And I do want to note that the owners of the property, they're local to Durham. They're not developers that are going to come here, develop, and leave. They live here, they work here, they've got a vested interest in doing right by the community, and they want to make sure that they have this property for a long time and just have ability to lease to a variety of tenants. And with that, I will answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Open the public hearing now. First up, you can have a seat. Thank you. First up, we have Blake King. Is there Blake King? You can step up to state your name and your address, please.
My name is Blake King. Address is 3014 Crowsdale Drive, Durham, North Carolina, 27705. I'm one of the property owners. Thought it was important to attend tonight. I can answer any questions you guys might have for me, or I'll try my best, but I think Pam said it best, is what we're trying to do is just have a little more flexibility. I was born here, raised here. Donnie King, which is my father, he was also born here, so we're local, and we're just trying to do the best we can.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Donnie King.
My name is Donald B. King. I am the co-owner of the property at 2309, 2315. We attended the earlier meetings, and would just like to take a minute to tell the board here. I am a Durhamite. I've been in Durham all my life. I was born on Club Boulevard over there at Watts Hospital. I have several properties in the area over here near this property. Know the properties very, very well. We acquired this property a few years ago, and the process between two tenants moving out, it was vacant for a little bit. Our possibilities of putting a tenant in it with OI was a little bit difficult. So it sat there for just a while. I know the intersection, I know the traffic, I know everything very, very well, and told the people in our meetings that we care about the area. We care about the area and wouldn't want to put anything in the area that might discourage the neighbors. We are the neighbors because we're there all the time. I live on Coal Mill Road and have been for 33 years. So when the lady commented earlier about the light shining in her window, which was about, I'm gonna say 250 feet away, we're concerned. If we know that that bothered her, we would be interested in helping that out. But just wanted to get up here and say that we are a part of the community. We are aware of our neighboring businesses around the area, and we want to keep it a nice neighborhood because we're concerned. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to get the zoning changed. So we got that flexibility of putting a good person, a good company there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have anyone on Zoom signed up to speak that I can see. Nope. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? None? All right, let's get someone move.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we take case Z22-00057, 2309 and 2315 Sparger Road to be forwarded to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to move this forward with a favorable recommendation. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Chagaris,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri-Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Were we supposed to do a roll call vote on the minutes, or was that fine?
It was okay to do a hand vote on.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, next case up, case 022-06-301 Infinity Road.
Thank you. Andy Lester with the Planning Department. This case is Z22-00006, 301 Infinity Road, for a proposed zoning map change. The property is located at 301 Infinity Road. There are 2 parcels totaling 18.16 acres. The existing zoning is residential suburban, 20. The applicant is proposing planned development residential, 7.203, and office and institutional to allow for up to 99 townhouses and 5,000 square feet of office building. The existing future land use map designations are low-density residential and recreation and open space. Should the zoning map change be approved, staff recommends designating the residential portion of this site low, medium density residential to be consistent with the proposed density, and the office portion to the flume. The existing zoning is residential suburban 20. The site is surrounded by land that is either developed or zoned for residential ranging from 1 to 4 units an acre. Farther to the west is the commercial node at Roxborough Road and Infinity Road. The aerial map shows the general location of the project, which is located east of the intersection of Roxborough and Infinity Roads. The site is primarily surrounded by residential development with commercial activity focused on Roxborough Road. The development plans, 2 points of access on Infinity Road, in addition to stub outs to neighboring properties. Minimum tree coverage and open space are proposed. Impervious surface limits is capped at 70%. These are some of the notable commitments. The applicant commits to making the following financial contributions: $65,000 to the Durham Dedicated Housing Fund and $15,000 to Durham Public Schools. No other commitments are made that are in excess of the UDO requirements. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on December 16, 2021. 7 community members were in attendance. 9 social pinpoint comments have been received, primarily concerning traffic and environmental protection. Staff determines this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted ordinances and policies, except for the future land use map designation of low-density residential. Staff recommends changing the designations to low, medium density residential and office, should the zoning map change be approved. The proposal is in the public interest due to increasing the supply of market rate housing and office space. Thank you, staff and the applicant are here to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant present?
Good evening. I'm Jamie Schwader with Parker Poe at 301 Fayetteville Street. I'm here on behalf of the applicant as well as Jeremy Anderson, who will be dividing our time in this presentation. Thank you to Andy for the summary, and I will get started with the presentation. So Andy did a great job, along with staff, describing the nature of this request. This is really an infill request between a developing area in North Durham that has a site plan to its east and another zoning that's coming before you in a couple of months to its west. So it's truly a very unique parcel that's kind of sandwiched between future development, and as you can see, is kind of very long and rectilinear. In that infill, we are proposing a mixed-use project that will not only add to the house space by providing townhomes, but also have an appropriate scaled office use towards the bottom of the site, towards the east there. This is consistent with the draft place type map because it's a transit opportunity area shown in the purple there. The majority of the area suggests that housing should be placed in the site because it's close proximity to existing infrastructure as well as transit options. A smaller portion of the site shown in brown is mixed residential neighborhood designed to add a diversity of housing types, but it also allows for small scale commercial and institutional uses consistent with our development plan. The zoning today provides for existing residential, but only about 31 units, as you see in your staff report. So because we are taking that density up to about 99 townhomes, we're able to triple the amount of housing supply, but still fit it in a very site-constrained manner and provide the O&I use there to the east. Key text commitments were highlighted, 99 townhomes and up to 5,000 square feet of office. Our transportation commitments would be to construct the turn lanes shown on your screen, add additional paved right-of-way for a bicycle lane, and additional right-of-way for a upcoming DOT project on Infinity Road that will provide some of the relief to the concerns that were raised on Social Pinpoint of the congestion that exists on the road today. In addition, we're committing $65,000 towards the Affordable Housing Fund and a $15,000 contribution to Durham Public Schools to offset some of the impacts of the zoning. The policies shown on your screen show how the rezoning is consistent with the draft comprehensive plan. Many of these policies speak to that, providing additional market rate housing and noting that we're not only providing the product of market rate housing, but also providing an affordable contribution. With that, the criteria are met. This rezoning is consistent and conforming with the uses of the nearby property character that's both in place today and as it will change with those approved and pending plans that are coming before you. It's more suitable for this additional increase of housing supply than the current by right uses that are on the site today or allowed on the site today, and it meets the demand in Durham. With the remaining time, I'd like Jeremy to address the development plan and the specific constraints on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Good evening. Jeremy Anderson, 111 West Main Street, landscape architect with Thomas & Hutton. Jamie covered most of the aspects of the site, but I'll highlight a few here. I don't know if I can point, but I'll just kind of walk through the site for the development plan you see on the screen. The parcel in purple, the smaller parcel is approximately 2 acres. That's the commercial parcel or office parcel. Would have an access point off Infinity Road and then a possible cross-access internal to the site to that development that Jamie mentioned already has a site plan approved on it. I think there was a street stubbed there, you see by those arrows, so we would propose a cross-access to that adjacent parcel. Through the middle of the site there, as you can see, there is floodplain and stream buffer that will be protected as required, but that totals about 3 to 3.5 acres of stream buffer through there. So that divides the two parcels in site and would be protected. And then the southern parcel there where the townhomes are proposed, Jamie mentioned the access off of Infinity Road there. You see the orange kind of wedge at the bottom. That is the right-of-way dedication for the NCDOT road improvement plan that is planned. So we are making that reservation. And then you see also 3 other cross-access connection points to the north, northwest, and east. Again, the one to the plan north, but east would be connecting to a cross-access that was proposed with that adjacent site plan. And then the other 2 are cardinal direction cross-access points that hopefully would connect to adjacent developments. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Just a reminder, the public hearing is open for this case. Do we have anyone? I don't have the sign-up sheet for this one. All right, thank you. First up is Samantha Boyd. As a reminder, when you step up to the podium, please state your name and your address.
Good evening. This is my first public speaking, so I'm very nervous. This affects my home where we live. The traffic right now, the trucks come around that corner, they override that corner, that light that they're talking about. So this will affect the traffic out of our neighborhood. It would basically close us in. We only have one way to go up to the light to turn left on Roxborough, off on Affinity itself. Buses come there to pick up our school children. It would affect everything. We weren't given enough notice. The sign for the rezoning was not at the area that it's going to affect. It was about a mile down. So our neighborhood, I know you say within 600 feet of where the development was supposed to take place, but it affects our way in and out of, so the whole development should have known about this. I discovered by accident. I didn't have enough time to warn everyone what was coming forth, what was the plan. I just wish they would go, move it to somewhere else. I'm concerned about the air quality. They're tearing down all our land. They're just tearing up and overdeveloping. I am very concerned about, the environmental effect of this home. I've been a Durhamite. I'm going on 62. I've been in that neighborhood for 30-something years. I think we should have had a more warning. The sign might have been an oversight that it wasn't right there where we come out, so more people could have known about it. That was my concern, that it might have been an oversight, but it was not fair that we weren't given enough notice. I discovered it by accident by walking my dog down at the park. It should have been near the light that is where it's going to come in at with the traffic and everything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jeff Sturkey. That's the way it looks, the way it's spelled. Sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jeff Sturkey. I live at 3 Wheatstone Court in Durham, 27712. My first meeting, I don't have any fancy slides, but to echo your comments, the fact that you notify landowners within 600 feet of a planned change, you need to expand that out to a mile or 2, please, because people don't hear about it. I'm hoping that the boat hasn't already sailed on this. I've got a number of questions. The commercial aspect of this, the 5,000 square foot area, I'm hoping that if it comes to pass, will be something that ends by 11 o'clock, because not much good happens in Durham after 11 o'clock at night. The traffic you talk about, this will more than double the traffic, and I'm curious as to how that was calculated. People that live in River Forest, their only way to get onto Infinity basically is a left turn if they're heading toward Roxborough Road or Duke Street, something like that. It's going to make it almost impossible for them to make a left turn there with this doubling of traffic. You talk about sidewalks in the proposal, and it's a nice proposal, but how far are those sidewalks going to be? How wide are they going to be? There are no sidewalks in that area that get you to Roxborough Road and can get you to the bus stop out there. It's a very challenging walk right now. When will these traffic things be done? Will they be done before this is finished, or will it be done afterwards? And to the degree that, I'm curious as to what degree this can be changed. You're talking about 99 townhomes right now. I'd hate to turn around and that be 200 townhomes just like that. I'm done.
All right, thank you. We'll get your questions answered shortly. Next up, we have T. Ross. K. Ross? T. Ross? Looks like a T to me.
Hello, my name is Katie Ross, 8135 Lowell Valley Drive, Bahama, and kind of generally from the north to the north of the county. So I sympathize with the concerns of these people. I didn't know anything about this particular development like before yesterday, but so I just come more with questions. I will say one thing, we learned through a development that we're concerned with, Mason Farms, that the estimated additional traffic for a development like this is 10 car trips per household. So in this case, that would be 99 dwelling units, so that would be 990 additional car trips on a already busy road. And that would not include the commercial development, which of course would likely have more, because I'm thinking in that building there would be quite a few offices. What kind, I don't know, but they're commercial, they'll have more traffic. Regarding the tree coverage, we also have on the agenda tonight this tree preservation. Well, to me, I look up at the aerial view and I see a really nicely forested area, of which the developers plan to leave maybe 20% of that covered with trees. And there is an issue between, even if that means they're leaving the old growth, what's already there, the fully grown trees, or whether they're counting new twigs that they're going to plant, which is also a common practice. There's a vehicular crossing of the floodplain and stream buffer they're saying will be required for this development. I don't get a sense of what that will be. You made a presentation, but I'd like to have a picture. What will that be going across that buffer? Or affordable housing? None. And these financial contributions, $65,000, that's a tiny percentage of the profit on one dwelling unit that they're going to sell. So I think that's unit. The only other, this is a good example.
Ms. Ross,
it's
your
not
time is
exactly in the UDO. The developers are not going to do it. These people are open about doing the minimum. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, now we would turn to Zoom for the public hearing. If anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Again, if anyone on Zoom would like to speak towards this case, please raise your hand now. Don't see anyone. Oh, someone speaking? Really? Come on.
We have two online, Debbie Schwartz and
Okay,
William
I say
Cruz.
Debbie Schwartz is first.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Please state your name and your address.
Yes. Debbie Schwartz, 5324 Fair Oaks Road in North Durham. I've lived here for 18 years. First, I want to reiterate what the previous speakers have said about the lack of notification. I was not aware of this project and I live fairly close to it, but there have been others that I've not known about also. To provide some context, Infinity Road is one lane in each direction. At Roxborough Road, it becomes Latta Road, also one lane in each direction. Today, most of Latta Infinity is wooded lots with some single-family homes. In 2021, the City Council approved the rezoning of 30 acres of woods at Latta and Guess to build 176 townhouses and 55,000 square feet of retail property. Construction is expected to begin this summer. There are actually two new projects at the Infinity Roxborough intersection, which would add almost 1,000 residential units and 32,000 square feet of commercial space to that corner. I understand that only one of these projects is under consideration tonight. However, rather than making decisions ad hoc on rezoning requests, we should consider how the immediate area as a whole will be affected. Between the three projects, we are actually talking about the potential addition of about 1,200 new residential units and 87,000 square feet of commercial property, all along a street that is one lane in each direction and today is primarily wooded. In 2015, I learned that the intersection of Infinity and Roxborough was one of the worst in Durham. 8 years later, the DOT website now lists a project to fix it, with construction not beginning until 2028. Yet we're considering adding thousands of vehicles to the congestion today. Development is necessary, but we must be responsible about it, ensuring that the existing infrastructure can service current and incoming occupants while maintaining some semblance of quality of life for all.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Your time is up.
Trees with concrete.
Ms. Schwartz, your time is up.
I have 3 more sentences.
Very quickly.
Replacing trees with concrete and asphalt will increase temperatures, exacerbate existing drainage problems, affect air quality, and put even more pressure on roads and the electric grid. Approving more construction without addressing the basic infrastructure issues is putting the cart before the horse. I urge you to recommend against this project at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have Leo Cruz. Please state your
Hi, good
name and
evening.
your
Can you hear me?
address. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Leo Cruz, and I reside at 1624 Crystal Creek Drive, and I have lived in Durham since 2012. I wanted to thank Debbie for her comments and pretty much reiterate what she had said and add just some additional points here. I'm somewhat conflicted on this particular proposal. On the one hand, allowing any further development without first fixing the traffic problem is not something that I can support. The current traffic experienced by existing residents and those that must traverse this space in order to move farther north is currently unacceptable. I believe the plan to address and hopefully solve traffic issues at Roxborough and Infinity has been in the works since at least 2018. So who is to say that this will not be pushed back further? Additionally, I know that the planning department primarily rules based on what is presented in front of them. However, as Debbie has pointed out, there is an additional proposal on Infinity and Roxborough for an additional 850 townhouses / apartments, as well as additional commercial, in addition to the Ladder Park proposal as well. This will further degrade the traffic situation and quality of life for existing residents. I do concur that this proposal somewhat fits in with what Durham's long-term vision and place type map says, and it will provide additional housing to relieve the housing crisis. But until we solve the traffic situation and at that particular corner, I can't be behind this project. So I urge you to reconsider and decline this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? If we could have the applicant address the questions that were asked by do you have those written down?
Good evening, Jeremy Anderson, Thomas and Hutton. Yeah, I will address a few of these questions. Jamie may touch on a few of them. And then I may call on the city to address some of the traffic questions that continue to come up, as I'm not a traffic engineer. The notification, maybe the city wants to touch on too. I mean, obviously, we had our neighborhood meeting about a couple years ago. We made the notification. It was, I think, attended by 7 or 8 folks. I assume the sign was posted at the right location, but probably missed by a lot of folks who come out of the River Forest neighborhood and turn left towards Roxborough. But the sign probably is in front of the site, and maybe that's why it was missed. I'm not sure what the city could do about that, but we did get a couple calls to our office, so I know the mailings were received by neighbors in the area. There was a question about the tree save. The minimum is 20%, which we would be meeting. I will clarify that there is actually over 5 acres of stream buffer on the site, which is approximately 30%. So I'm not saying we'll commit to that, but we will most likely have close to 30% tree save on the project, given the stream buffers that we're going to be protecting. There was a comment about crossing the stream and what that would look like. That is a potential cross-access. It's a stub. The neighbor to the north of us, I'm looking at the screen here, I can see it, but did provide a stub. We will provide one. I think that would be worked out at site plan stage, whether that crossing actually happens. I think it would be considered from an environmental standpoint of whether it's a required access point, but we have 3 other access points that we would like to connect to as well. It depends on what that opportunity is. And I think with that,
there was a question about what is the commercial?
Thank you. It is committed to be a maximum 5,000 square foot of an office building. So it's not a commercial, it's not retail. You were concerned about the timing. It's an office building. He seems maybe a medical office, something like that. So I assume it's an 8 to 5 type use. It is not something that's meant to be open late hours. It would be a an office component, not a commercial or retail component. Is there anything else, Jamie? Oh, the number of units, yes. Someone mentioned about the number of units going to 200 or something. The commitment is 99 maximum townhome units, so if that is approved, that will be the maximum, and that cannot be exceeded or changed. So,
Thank you.
Erlene, could I ask you to touch on Infinity traffic, if you don't mind, and city plans, DOT plans for that intersection?
Erlene Thomas, Transportation. So the traffic that's shown in the staff report is generated using industry standards. You know, there is a certain number of trips that are generated by each type of land use. And for townhomes, that is about 7 to 8 trips per unit. And so that's why you see that smaller number. I think someone spoke in reference 10 trips per unit, and that is for a single-family dwelling. So those generally generate more trips. The existing traffic, this down so I don't have to tip. The traffic that's shown in the staff report, I believe the number from the DOT traffic count is reported as about 8,000 trips per day. That was from 2017. I did do a quick search so the latest traffic count is from 2021 and is actually reduced to about 6,600 vehicles per day. So that's the current traffic count. So there is adequate capacity, or the road can handle more traffic than what it's currently serving. DOT does have a project for intersection improvements that is, currently funded. Obviously those projects get reprogrammed and revisited every time they do a new traffic improvement program. So we'll see what comes of that project for future. I think someone else mentioned, additional zonings to come. Those would be evaluated based on the traffic they're generating as well. If a traffic study is required, they would be required to make improvements to mitigate the impacts of their development. This development, however, did not trigger the city's threshold for requiring a TIA, so they are required to build turn lanes at their site access points, but nothing off-site beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies, I should be saying Chair Cameron tonight. I'm learning as well. So thank you, Chair Cameron. So notification-wise, the sign was posted, and we have an affidavit of where the sign was posted, but we understand they are hard to see. So we always encourage people to look at the Social Pinpoint Engagement site to see the project itself. We can share that information with you as well. It's an additional notification that we don't have, that not every community has. We also send letters within 600 feet. That is the state requirement. Looking into expanding that would require a change, which I think we talked about exploring it sometime in the future when we do some UDO updates. And then we also are required to put it in the newspaper, which I know everybody reads, but there is a legal ad in the newspaper as well. So it has been notified. However, we realize that some of the mechanisms are a little outdated, so we do encourage you to go onto the Social Pinpoint website and look there to stay notified.
Thank you.
I apologize, Chair Cameron. I need to make one correction for the record. The Durham Unified Development Ordinance requires 600 feet notice, but the state law does not require 600 feet. I think it may be 100 feet or something like that, but it's definitely not 600 feet. So just wanted to make sure that was cleared up.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cruz has his hand up on Zoom. I believe he had about 20 seconds left on his original time. You can let him in and ask his question.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I was just wondering if, to further my knowledge, if I can get the information that Durham uses for the traffic analysis, just so that I can understand better how those decisions are made.
Yes.
Early and Thomas Transportation. So those trips are generated using a national standard. It is the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we always use the most current edition, which is the 11th edition currently.
Thank you. All right, seeing no additional hands raised in the Zoom or here in the public hearing, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the floor up to the commissioners' questions and comments. Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, I had a question for the applicant. I appreciate what in putting together the layout of where the commercial portion of the property would be, as well as residential. I do notice that there is that property next door. I know we do things, evaluate parcel by parcel and application by application. I noticed that you're the same kind of applicant for that other parcel. Is there going to be any improvements in traffic? It seems like that's going to have a greater effect of the traffic in that area.
Are you asking about the property to the west?
Yes, to the west.
Yes, that's a future zoning that's going to come before you and is still in staff review and working with the Transportation Department about what type of improvements it would be required to make, but it is of a larger scale.
So if I was looking at, some of the concerns about traffic, that might be alleviated with this other parcel or this other application.
That's correct.
And she referenced the STIP.
That's correct. And it would also go to the gentleman's point about only providing portions of sidewalk, even though we'd be providing portions of sidewalk on this project. As future projects come along and would have to follow the UDO, there would be that future connectivity if those projects are approved.
Appreciate your comments, and on that, I know it's outside of scope. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Cutright.
Yeah, just two questions. Are there opportunities to restrict use, given that it's office, to alleviate concerns, to say it won't be nightclubs, firing range, et cetera? Feels like an easy one there. And then my second question is, one, the $65,000 proffer for affordable housing is appreciated. Is there an opportunity to do additional affordable housing, 5%? It's 5 lots, maybe at cost to some affordable developer or something like that. Figured I'd make sure I get that in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Both these questions I'll have to go back to the owner developer on. I think yes, on the restricting uses, they do not have a tenant or a game plan, so I think there's some uses that could certainly be limited there that would be a little more compatible to the residential. We realize this is completely encompassed by residential around it, so that's where I said the idea is kind of low intensity office, so there's some uses I'm sure we could limit. Affordable housing, we are absolutely willing to consider and look at some other options. That is where we started, and we wanted to make some proffer, but willing to consider looking at some other options there.
Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, so as I drive around North Durham, I mean, the numbers of trees that are disappearing from our community is alarming. I mean, over the last 6 months, it's almost like a third of the trees that I pass on a daily basis are now gone. What can your project do to sort of stem the tide with regards to the impact on our community?
Well, I'll reiterate that point about, and I know committing to something that is already required to be saved, i.e. the 30% that's covered by our stream buffer. So the 20% would be required. The site will most likely have 30%, but it'll be contained to the stream buffer. The rest of the site will be more or less open for development, limited opportunities to save trees. New street trees we put back, buffer plantings will be installed for areas that they're required. But given the almost 30% that would be set aside within the stream buffer, it's hard to proffer any additional tree save in other areas, beyond that. We would look to preserve trees, along the street and stuff like, in areas like that. But, the topography on this site, as many other projects have incurred, is difficult to develop and grade without, removing the majority of trees in the development area. So,
Another question? Go ahead.
So in your project, you also talked about bike lanes. And so if you've ever driven down Infinity, I mean, I just can't picture in my mind a bike lane on that road. I absolutely positively cannot even picture that. Even if they expanded the road, which they're not going to do, I just can't imagine how that's going to impact the community further.
I see Earlene stepping up, but that is a requirement by the city to add the additional 5-foot. Earlene, I don't know, are we changing to a standard of a wider sidewalk versus? Okay, yes.
Yes, Earlene Thomas, Transportation. So in this area, generally, and in many places across Durham, instead of on-road bicycle facilities, we've transitioned to the 10-foot shared paths for pedestrians and bicycles. And that's also become a DOT requirement because they have not been allowing the on-road bicycle lanes due to higher volumes of traffic.
I might be out of line on this point, but I don't see how these bike lanes that have been created are adding to the quality of life when really what's happening is it's making traffic more difficult in many of these communities. I drive through them. I hear from the people who live in these communities. And so I think we need to relook this.
So I believe what Earlene said is that the widened asphalt on the road would be replaced with a multi-use trail. So the bike lane is not on the road, it's actually combined with the sidewalk. And Jamie mentioned earlier the project to the west that would go to Infinity would continue that sidewalk. So you would have a off-road pedestrian and bicycle path, at least through this project, assuming it gets approved, and the one next door. But I appreciate what you say. Riding a bike on a road like this, adjacent to cars is not friendly, but off-road on a wider sidewalk, that's appealing.
Thank you. Commissioner Shigeris.
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. You mentioned the topography of the site, and I see in the staff report that there's steep slopes involved. Is this parcel going to have to be dynamited to be developed?
Pardon?
Dynamited.
Oh, I am not aware at this point, no. I think the steep slopes are mostly within the stream buffers, not within the development area.
I see the steep slope on the western portion, adjacent probably to the other property that's undergoing.
But we have not done geotech analysis to know if there's rock within the site.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Zuri Williams.
Hi, so I just wanted to echo Commissioner Valentine's concerns about the bike or increasing the sidewalk, mainly because I'm very familiar with this area, and there is also a very large hill on Infinity as you go up. So even though people will, potentially be on a trail or a sidewalk, it is still a very dangerous road to travel. Also, I have a comment more so towards the outreach of reaching out to like the residents, especially in this neighborhood, I think in River Forest particularly, because their one entrance into or to get to Roxborough Road is off of Infinity. You have to make that left, and then you have to make another left on to Roxborough. And I think I remember back in the maybe early 2000s that you used to be able to make a left out of the neighborhood onto Roxborough, but it became too dangerous. So I think, just for that neighborhood in particular, a little extra consideration to alerting the neighbors is vital, because I think to hear that maybe 9 people attended the meeting, the area is much larger. So that's just my concern and my comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams, we're happy to work with staff on the notice as it goes forward to council and make sure that we're appropriately noticing or even over-noticing on that point. And I think likewise, we're happy to work with staff in converting the commitment from an in-lane, bicycle lane to separated, whether that happens during the zoning or per staff's direction at site plan.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the commissioners? Let's close the public hearing and ready for a roll call vote.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry, yeah, motion.
What?
I'm sorry, a motion, yes.
Motion? Okay, we can do a vote after the motion. Anyway, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take Z22 quadruple 06 301 Infinity Road to be forwarded to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Cutright. Is that what that was? Valentine. To move this case forward favorably. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, can staff clarify the proffer, because staff have requirements on notification? Is the applicant willing to proffer notifying at a 1,000-foot distance themselves, or we just want to clarify on that proffer?
We're happy to entertain that. I mean, if that's what the staff's desire is. I was thinking of making sure that the notice was at the entrance of the neighborhood because the lady mentioned that she didn't see it. So either of those would be fine. If you prefer 1,000, I think we can agree to that.
Okay, we will work with the applicant to have them notice at 1,000 feet, and we will make sure the sign that we place is at that spot.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chair Cameron?
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright?
Yes.
Commissioner Sagaris?
No.
Commissioner McIver?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine?
No.
Commissioner Zuri Williams?
No.
Motion carries 6-2.
Thank you. Five, three.
My apologies, what? 5-3? Motion carries 5-3. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have case Z22 00012 1102 and 1034 South Miami Boulevard.
Thank you. Andy Lesh with the Planning Department. This case, Z22 00012, 1102 and 1034 South Miami Boulevard is a proposed zoning map change. The property is located at 1102 and 1034 South Miami Boulevard and consists of two parcels totaling 27 acres. The existing zoning is residential suburban 20 and commercial center. The applicant is proposing residential suburban multifamily with a development plan to allow up to 350 multifamily apartments with at least 10% of the units designated as affordable. The existing future land use designation is medium density residential and commercial. The proposed residential suburban multifamily with the development plan is inconsistent with the commercial flume. If approved, staff recommends the flume to be changed to medium density residential to match the majority of the property. Lastly, the site lies within the watershed protection overlay, FJB. The existing zoning is residential suburban and commercial center. The site is surrounded by a commercial center to the north and RS20 to the east, west, and south. The aerial map shows the general location of the project. To the north is Parkside Shopping Center. To the west, east, and south is undeveloped land. The development plan indicates two access points along Miami Boulevard. Impervious surface limits is capped at the maximum 70% that the FJB watershed allows. Some notable commitments include 10% of the units designated as affordable housing, dwelling units as defined by the UDO, and 29.5% tree preservation. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with the UDO requirements on February 28, 2022. 2 community members were in attendance. 4 social pinpoint comments have been received in relation to the case concerning traffic and the lack of a multi-use component of the development. Now, the proposal is inconsistent with the existing future land use map designation. If approved, staff recommends a change to the Flume to medium-density residential. While South Miami Boulevard is already above LOSD capacity, the proposed zoning district would be at a lower intensity than what could be built on the site by right under current zoning. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted ordinances and policies. And the proposal is in the public interest due to the increasing the supply of market rate and affordable housing options in the city of Durham. Thank you, staff and the applicant are here to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. All right, may we have the applicant come forward for a presentation?
Good evening. I'm Tom Johnson with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh, North Carolina, here on behalf of the applicant. And we concur with the staff report and its findings on our behalf. I did want to point out some of the highlights that staff talked about. Number one, this is being rezoned from existing RS20, single-family residential and commercial center, to multifamily to RSM for up to 350 units, but 10% of those will be affordable as defined in the UDO, which is a 60% AMI for up to 30 years. We are preserving trees in excess of what would be required, 29.5%, as opposed to the 20% requirement of trees will be preserved. And even though there's a stream on the site, there will be a stream buffer, a 100-foot stream buffer, and there are no utility or road crossings of that stream on the site. So from an environmental point of view, we're exceeding what would be required. From a traffic point of view, as staff mentioned, the permitted uses that are on the site now would generate more traffic than what we are proposing with multifamily. So there will actually be a reduction in traffic. In addition, there will be turn lanes that will be constructed on Miami Boulevard to accommodate the turning traffic for this development. One of the entrances will be full movement. That means right and left. The other will be restricted to right in, right out. But in addition, there's a 50-foot contribution of additional right-of-way in front of the project, which is important because there are already improvements that are scheduled for this section of road for Highway 70 South Miami Boulevard, and those improvements are in process as mentioned in the staff report. And on the existing plan with NCDOT, there's actually a service road that would be in front of this project. Again, that's subject to change as there's some discussions with the MPO and DOT. But the last plan that we saw would have a service road in front of the project. And the traffic that would be generated is actually approximately 763 fewer vehicles per day, as opposed to what could be done on the project of right now. And it is on a major thoroughfare and provides ready access to the community. There are parks within the area that would provide access for the community. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We concur with the staff's conclusion that this is in the public interest due to the market rate units and need for housing and the affordable units that are being provided. I would like to reserve time for rebuttal and answering any questions that may come up from any other comments, but I'm available to answer any questions that you may have at this point.
Thank you. All right, continuing with the public hearing, we're going to go to the in-person comments. We have Donna Standback.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Donna Steinbach. I live at 4825 Jimmy Rogers Road, Durham, North Carolina. I have like 3 issues with this project. The first is that it's adjacent to Little Lick Creek, which is an impaired creek, and that's very important with the large number of house units being brought in. The other thing is, this is a lot that from 70 is just all woods, and now we're reducing it to 30%. So that hurts, or 29.5%. The other last issue is the traffic is so bad on US 70, you need a special access road to get on and off. I travel the road often. In fact, I came past the road to get here this evening. My sister had her car totaled a year ago by another driver where the hill that's there blocked the traffic, his visibility of the traffic, and he just ran there and rammed her into several other vehicles. It's not a very safe area. It was right at the corner of this property. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Pamela Williams.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. There it is. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get up my presentation. Good afternoon. My name is Pam Williams. I live at 2130 Venture Trail, Durham. Lifelong resident of Durham. I go down this road quite a bit. What I'm showing you here is the area here in red. This is traffic soil basin, which is highly erosive, and will drain into Little Lick Creek, which is on the 3D list, impaired list. Falls Lake and the encroachment on Little Lick Creek should be protected, and Durham does have a plan to improve Little Lick Creek, but continuing to mass grade continues to erode, and right now, nobody's figured out how to keep the sediment out of the creeks, apparently. I also want to bring to your attention that this project is about halfway between I-85 and US 70 interchange and Miami Boulevard Sharon Road, which is about 4,200 feet either way. Also, just less than 3,000 feet north of this, there's about 600 apartments that are going in right off US 70. And I also want to mention that this is a minority area over on the northwest side, and I'm not sure if they really got the notice or about it, especially if nobody or only 2 people attended the neighborhood meeting. Here I want to show that this land is mature trees. I want you to please note that. And yes, they are giving, what's required is 20%, 5 acres. They're exceeding it by 8 acres. Not exceeding it by 8. They are exceeding it by 2.5 acres. But I want to bring to your attention, and if everything comes up right here, here is the creek, and here is the creek. And all the trees that are being saved are within the buffers. So this is like being, oh my gracious, how can I get to traffic?
Yep.
It's terrible.
Your time. Thank you.
Is that 2 minutes?
It was quick.
Okay.
Thank you.
But can I send this to y'all so y'all can take it into account? And thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, I had a lot to share with y'all, a lot of pictures.
If there is anyone on the Zoom that wishes to speak at the current time, please use the raise hand feature. Again, if there's anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak, please use the raised hand feature. Is there anyone in the audience that has not previously signed up that wishes to speak? None. All right, moving on to commissioners. Commissioner Cutright.
Thanks.
Close the public hearing first, right? Yes, close the public hearing.
We got it. I think I just note on this project that 10% affordable is extremely commendable. We don't see that often. What I do recognize is the environmental concerns, but I think what I'd like to point out is that there's the practical aspects of this are that there are costs to everything. So while the developer may be able to go above and beyond environmentally, then, it's a fair thing to think about. It's one of the conundrums that you have in development, which is where do you spend your money? So in this case, they are choosing to utilize some of those funds to subsidize housing, which is really needed. It is at the expense of some environmental concerns. I think we recognize that. I think that's just one of the choices that are being made. It's a hard choice, but that's the choice that's being made. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I appreciate the 10%.
Commissioner Morgan.
I had a question for the applicant. Can you provide me some information on why it would just be residential? I know this area, there's a lot of commercial development in the area. Can you explain, give us a little of your rationale for just residential?
Well, the rationale for just residential is there's, as you mentioned, existing commercial that's in the area and including adjoining the site at the intersection of Pleasant and 70. There's a commercially zoned piece of property there to provide services. What happens typically is as you get the residents in the area, more commercial will come because they'll have more folks that have a demand for services. But there are already a significant number of restaurants and other services up and down this section, although there's areas right around here as acknowledged that have not been developed, but that's what I would anticipate happening. Okay. So that's why, because of the existing commercial.
Sure. Another question that I had was, as far as access points, is there a thought of providing some kind of an access point in the rear or the behind, away from the traffic? Is there any provision that you could allow for an access point? Because I see another development coming up right behind it.
Because of topography and the limitations caused by what we have to do environmentally with the stream buffer, we couldn't accommodate that given the topography of the site. And we worked with Earlene Thomas and determined that connection would not be necessary.
Okay. And the last one is, given that you are providing affordable housing, would it make sense to provide any kind of transit stop or bus stop along 70, US 70? Would you consider something like that as?
We would consider it if there were one available. As of now, there's not. I think at one time, I think there was, as I saw on the Durham Maps program, there was one that was kind of Route 2 goes down Anger Avenue, and there was a Route 2A that was supposed to go up and down this section at some point. And certainly if that were to occur, there would be consideration given to a transit stop.
Yeah, given that we're doing a lot of development in that area, and I know there's still a lot of things up in the air about what's needed.
But I think on that map that I saw for potential future service, there was a stop at Pleasant and Miami, and there was one near Laurel Drive, which is both adjoining this property.
Okay. Thank you for your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Valentine.
Yes, I'd like to also commend you on the 10% affordable housing provision in this project. However, I do have a concern about Little League Creek. It seems like it comes up in a lot of these projects with respect to its impact. And so as you move, I think it's upstream from your project, Little League Creek is taking what I would refer to as a pounding, if I can use that word. So what are you prepared to do in your project to sort of slow down the damage that's being done to this creek?
Well, we've got requirements that we already have. This is in the Falls Jordan overlay, so we have limitations. As was mentioned, we have a limitation of 70% in terms of impervious. When we develop the property, we will put stormwater controls in place that will, limit the flow of stormwater. Right now, there's no control over the stormwater on this site since it's not been developed, but we were providing that. And then the tree cover at 29.5% additional tree cover, that helps with that type of runoff as well. And there is a buffer requirement, the 100%, 100-foot buffer around the stream that crosses the property. So all of those are in place, and they're intended to be in place to address exactly what you talk about. And that's what we will be doing.
Yes.
So would you agree that those same provisions are in place upstream?
I don't know in particular, how that development is going and what restrictions there would be. If it's in the Falls Jordan overlay, it would have similar restrictions. And certainly the 100-foot stream buffers are there. The stormwater controls would be there for any development in that area that would be occurring, so they would have to meet stormwater regulatory requirements. And there's soil and erosion control requirements that, again, we'll have to meet, and somebody, as they develop that, would have to meet those soil and erosion control requirements during development.
Well, I guess I'll just end by saying that whatever provisions are now in place don't seem to be adequately addressing the problem.
Well, and again, I can't really speak to the other property and what they have done or not done and what's required and not required. I can just commit that on this one, we will do the environmentally responsible thing and have exceeded some of those requirements.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Again, I'll just reiterate what my two previous commissioners have said. We appreciate the proffer for the affordable housing and the length, the 30-year length that it will stay affordable is important. Ready?
I just had one more question. I was wondering, would you, I know we have a text amendment coming up about clearing and all that. Would you consider adhering to that particular text amendment if it gets passed or even voluntarily?
I have not read that.
It's coming up. I know we're.
Yeah, I have not read that provision to see. I mean, if it's a requirement that would come into effect as we get through site plan review, obviously it would, I mean, if it's passed before we do that, it will likely be a requirement.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to move this case forward.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take case Z22-00012, 1102 and 1034 South Miami Boulevard to be forwarded to the city with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Cutright to move this case forward. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Shigaris,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri-Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. All right, we're moving right along here. All right, next up, we have case Z22-00054, Aventon Harris Farms.
Thank you. This case, Z22-0054, Aventon Harris Farm, is a proposed zoning map change. The property is located at 825 Fayetteville Road, totaling 39.99 acres. Existing zoning is residential rural. The applicant is proposing a planned development residential 12.471 zoning district to allow up to 490 apartments and up to 5,000 square feet of office. The existing future land use map designation is very low density residential and recreation and open space. The proposed PDR 12.471 is inconsistent with the flume. If approved, staff recommends to change the flume to medium-high density residential and recreation and open space. Lastly, the site is within the watershed protection overlay, the FJB. The existing zoning is residential rural. The site is surrounded by residential rural and planned development residential. The aerial map shows the general location of the project. Undeveloped parcels are directly adjacent to the north and south. Generally to the east are single-family subdivisions. To the southwest of the site is Chancellor's Ridge Townhome Development and the mixed-use project 751 South. The development plan includes the 2 access points along Fayetteville Road. Minimum tree coverage and open space are proposed. Impervious surface limits is capped at the maximum 70% that the FJB watershed allows. Some notable commitments include 50 units designated as affordable housing dwelling units as defined by the UDO, 10-foot shared path along the full frontage of Fayetteville Road, exterior balconies and patios for each unit, and a clubhouse with amenities. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on June 9th, 2022. 103 community members were in attendance. 48 social pinpoint comments have been received in relation to the case concerning traffic, stormwater, environmental protection, and lack of engagement. Staff determines the proposal is inconsistent with the existing future land use map designation. If approved, staff recommends a change to the flume to medium density residential and recreation and open space. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans and ordinances. This proposal is in the public interest due to increasing the supply of market rate and affordable housing options in the city of Durham. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'd like to open a public hearing now. We'll hear first from the applicant.
Good evening, Chair Cameron, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Patrick Biker. I live at 2614 Stewart Drive. I'm an attorney with Morningstar Law Group, and I'm here tonight representing Aventon Companies out of Raleigh for this agenda item. Tonight, I'm joined by Ron Pereira, one of the principals with Aventon Companies. Aventon is one of the leading multifamily developers in the Triangle and across the Southeast. It's been my privilege to work with Ron for about 20 years now, and during that stretch, we worked on Atria South Point Walk at the corner of Fayetteville Road and Woodcroft Parkway. And then we worked on Southern Oaks at Davis Park at the corner of Davis Drive and Hobson Road, which are on the slide you're seeing right now. Also joining us tonight is Ted Heilbrunn, the principal of Kelly Development Company, whom you'll hear from right after me. Ted is one of Durham's and North Carolina's leading affordable housing developers. We also have Kelsey Westwood and Earl Llewellyn, our site engineer and traffic engineer with Kimley Horn. The proposal before you today is to rezone almost 40 acres of land located at 8250 Fayetteville Road to PDR 12.471. This rezoning will facilitate a multifamily development that will contain 490 new apartments and 5,000 square feet of office space. Of the 490 apartments, 50 will be affordable housing units financed with a 4% low-income housing tax credit. At the outset, we think it is important to note that this development plan is consistent with the new place type map. On the place type map, this parcel is designated mixed-use neighborhood, and consistent with that designation, this project creates a mixed-use community, since we're including 5,000 square feet of office use in addition to 490 apartments. On a more general note, I believe this project demonstrates how multifamily development in Durham can be done as a partnership between a market rate developer like Ron Pereira and a low-income housing tax credit developer like Ted Heilbrunn. With this proposal, our team is responding to one of our city's greatest concerns, the growing cost of housing. We are doing that by providing 50 new affordable housing units along with up to 440 market rate units. To try to be a good neighbor, our team has undertaken solid efforts with community engagement in connection with this rezoning. To that end, my recollection is we held 3 virtual neighborhood meetings over the last 10 months. As Mr. Lester mentioned, we had over 100 people attend our first virtual neighborhood meeting. And I have to say, having done this type of work for over a quarter century, I was somewhat surprised that the number of attendees at our 3rd virtual neighborhood meeting dropped to 17 people. I do wish to emphasize we sent out notification letters to almost 450 folks for the most recent neighborhood meeting held on April 20, 2023. Accordingly, we have tried to engage with the community and create a development that fits well within the surrounding area and takes account of the feedback that we've been given. In part due to that extensive community engagement, we've committed to using a modern farmhouse design for this project. And consistent with that architectural style, the 3-story apartment buildings will have pitched roofs. While the choice to use pitched roofs does increase the building height from 35 feet to 42 feet, which we will indicate on our development plan, the result is an aesthetic appearance that we think fits well with the nearby neighborhoods. As you can see in this slide and the next one, many homes in the vicinity have pitched roofs. And now I'd like to hand over the podium to Ted Heilbrunn from Kelly Development to discuss the affordable housing component of this project. Our team will be happy to answer any questions. We respectfully ask for your approval. Thank you.
Chair Cameron and members of the Planning Commission, my name is Ted Heilbrunn. My address is 912 Village Crossing Drive, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Thank you for your time tonight. We're proud to be a part of this proposed development because of the opportunity to bring affordable housing to a part of the city which rarely sees new construction affordable development. As Planning Commission is well aware, affordable development in today's rate and construction cost climate almost always requires city gap funding. As the remaining affordable bond and ARPA resources are exhausted, we affordable developers are required to depend on market rate partners to make developments pencil. It's exceptionally rare to find a market rate partner who is willing to gap fund LIHTC units on site, as is the case here, and even rarer to find one willing to do so outside of Durham's traditionally lower income neighborhoods, where almost all the affordable development here in the city occurs. The commitment here to guarantee the construction of new affordable units, as opposed to simply making a nominal donation to the Affordable Housing Fund, is significant. Our market rate partner is committing millions of dollars in gap funding, and that number could very well increase in the years before construction commences with continued interest rate volatility and cost inflation. I can't overstate how unique and comprehensive this affordable housing commitment is. Finally, we are strong believers that lower income residents in the city should have equal access to restaurants, grocery stores, retail, public parks, and greenway trails. Regrettably, the majority of the affordable development in the city happens in neighborhoods where many of these residential amenities are lacking. Building affordable housing in such an amenity-rich neighborhood like this one will be life-changing for the 50 families that eventually become our residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. All right, we're moving to the sign-up sheet. The first person we have is Fran Small.
Yes, my name is Fran Small, and I live at 7 Beaufort Court, which is in the hills at South Point at the end of Federal Road. My backyard bumps up to Federal Road across the street from this proposed rezoning site. This proposed rezoning site is zoned as a watershed. It was zoned that way for a reason. This watershed flows into Jordan Lake. This watershed does valuable things for us, and it does it for free. Some of its jobs are filtering pollutants, better water quality, carbon storage, nutrient cycling, erosion control, reducing flooding, and it also is a great indicator of the health of our environment. This watershed is rated C, which is not great. Getting rid of this land and more development will only make matters worse. Please vote no to this rezoning and let this watershed continue to do its job. The other issue is the traffic increase. Putting a stoplight, a turn lane, improvements to the 751 intersection will do nothing to address a traffic increase of thousands of vehicles a day in the last half mile of this 2-lane road. No one wants to buy a home or live in a community if they can't get in and out of it safely. Please vote no to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Paul Schnick.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. My name is John Paul Schick. I live at 308 Alumni Avenue in Chancellor's Ridge, which is adjoining this property. I am here tonight in opposition to this rezoning, but I am not here tonight asking for no rezoning. I have friends that are builders and developers, so I believe in housing, building housing and affordable housing, but I also believe in reasonable and responsible development. I brought a map that shows the site that we're talking about, mainly to point out everything that's around it. Single-family neighborhoods and subdivisions, for the most part. We've got 2 churches on Fayetteville Road. Herndon Park is down here. There are a couple of farm tracks. There is some townhomes as part of Chancellor's Ridge. We have 80 units in Chancellor's Ridge. There are townhomes at 751 South, and then the new South Point Trails is also townhomes. I mention these things because I believe that townhomes is probably the best use for this property. It is a happy medium. It is the Goldilocks between 490 units, again, in a place where Fayetteville Road and 751 already have terrible traffic. Two-lane roads that are not designed, at least now, to be widened to handle 490 additional cars. And let's face it, most units will have more than 1 car in them. So I think townhomes is probably the sweet spot. I'm in favor of developing and adding townhomes. I think it fits in with the surrounding communities, but a 3 to 4 story apartment complex does not. So I'd ask you to vote against this. Thank you.
Next up, we have Adam Smith.
I want to thank the committee. Great respect for what you do. Thanks for having me here. My name's Adam Smith. I live at 108 Graduate Court. It's in Chancellor's Ridge, also abutting this proposed property. I, just like John Paul, am not against kind of new development. I would just want to make sure that it's consistent, and this zoning is very inconsistent with surrounding land uses, which are primarily single-family homes, as he pointed out. The density being over 5 times more than the surrounding neighborhoods, and the 3 to 4 story buildings being within, 100 feet of the neighborhoods that they're right against. But the main thing I think that's going to be an issue is the traffic infrastructure. It's already a problem, as was pointed out, along Fayetteville and 751. The other side of Fayetteville heads right to South Point Mall and often backs up. In the proposed traffic study, they said there would be 176 new trips in the AM and about 232 trips in the PM rush hours, which are far less than half of the actual units that are there. The ITE standard is between 7.32 trips per day and 10, which would indicate about 3,500 to 5,000 extra trips per day. There's also no bike paths along there on the way to South Point Mall, which is the nearest bus stop. It's over a mile away. There are no, and what I saw on the plan, no walking paths planned. There's also less parking than is required around 2. I think they were trying to get it down to 1.5 or less, which would also be an issue. And then finally, around public infrastructure, the Lions Farm was just built, just went live last year and is already nearing, or is already pretty full. Between this, and I know we're only considering this parcel, but there's another 39-acre project being proposed that would add another 300 homes and further tax both of those situations. So I oppose and would urge a less dense neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Christopher McLennan. You don't have your
Christopher McLennan, 302 Alumni Avenue. Madam Chair, Commission members, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. You've heard from several members that oppose this, and I do as well in its current form. I'd also urge you not to discount those that are not here tonight. It is difficult for your average individual to make it to these meetings. You heard earlier how much community engagement was in this from the beginning. What I don't think you have heard is a single constituent that lives in these neighborhoods that is not financially connected to this project that will tell you, I've looked at this, I think this is a good thing. I want it. This is good for me. This is good for the surrounding area. This is good for our community. And the reason I don't think you'll hear that is because that position simply doesn't make sense. This is an attempt to cram too many units and maximize profits in an area that the infrastructure is already maximized. It simply can't handle this additional burden. The traffic in this area is already a problem. And this is an area in which you see a number of school buses coming and going at that morning and afternoon. An attempt to get even a right turn out of my neighborhood in the morning when I'm taking my kids to school is a serious problem, and it's already backing up to the light on Stagecoach Road. As people get impatient, as people get late for work and school, you have more people pulling out. You have those school buses that are not particularly good at making those turns. You have more accidents. You have more liability. And nobody's going to be there to widen that road once this development is built. The other concern I have is the environmental impact. This area has changed drastically in the last 20, 30 years. South Point Mall itself is a massive impervious surface, and we've continued to build and build and build. I grew up in this area, and Stagecoach Road never used to flood, even during hurricanes. Now it takes a few days worth of rain, and Stagecoach is flooded. And they may have put additional infrastructure into there, but who's paying for that? The taxpayers. It's not these developers. If we continue to add this impervious surface, there's going to be increasing environmental concerns. And for those reasons, I would ask that you deny this petition in its current proposal. As previously said, I'm not here to stand in the way of progress. I want them to make reasonable use of their land. Madam Chair, may I have 15 seconds to finish? But the key word there is reasonable. Let's get the units down to a reasonable size and make an appropriate use of this land. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will move to the public comment on the Zoom. Again, if you, I'm sorry, someone. Oh, sorry, it's on this back side. Ted? No, you're not, Ted. Okay, you already spoke. So, ma'am, your name is not on the list. If you do wish to speak, you can come up. It's this case? Okay. Step up to the podium, state your name and your address, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak, especially since I must have put my name on the wrong piece. I'm Michelle Scanlon. I live at 408 Swift Creek Crossing, and that's in Hills of South Point. I want to first just mention that during each one of these meetings and all of the public interaction, our neighborhood was not told. We live directly across from this property, but only the one that was adjacent to it on that side of the road. And so we would only get notice if by neighbor we heard about it, somebody sent us an email and said, did you hear? Or somebody said it on next door. So I have a feeling you would have had a whole lot more people at those meetings if we had had an opportunity to know well in advance and be able to handle it. That was the first thing. I also want to say that I am not for this, and I also want to mention that, it was briefly mentioned, this is one of two projects, one stacked on the other. So when you think you're adding 490 apartments in an area that is not set up, the road system's not set up, the school system cannot handle what would basically be doubling the amount of people on those roads. There is also adjacent to it, heading towards the corner of 751 and Fayetteville Road. They're also coming to you in the near future to add almost the same amount, approximately 400 more apartments. So what we're actually talking about affecting this area in this two-lane road is 890 apartments in an area that is not set up to handle these apartments at all. So if we could be more, like they're saying, if we could do something that is a more reasonable in-between kind of thing, we're talking about an area that cannot handle doubling the number of cars, doubling the number of people living on this little tiny road. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. We'll now move to the Zoom participants. Again, if you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature, and the chair will call on you to speak. First, and a reminder, still please state your name clearly and your address. So first up, we have Bailey Dumaine.
Hi, my name is Bailey Dumaine. I live at 312 Marist Court, Durham 27713, which is one of the properties in the Chancellor's Ridge Development subdivision. The property that is under consideration for rezoning tonight is actually right behind my backyard, and thus has a big impact on me and my community. I have been active in engaging in this project since the first meeting from the lawyer and the developer, and I would just like to mention that I think that the drop in engagement that was brought up from the project applicant might have been due to lack of perceived sincere engagement with the community. I will also mention that I am immersed right now in the process of helping my grandparents relocate to this area. They are two retired folks who live on a fixed income, and they're coming here to help me with my children as I enter graduate school. And I'm currently unable to find a place for them to live in their budget range. There are many options that already exist in the $1,600 to $1,700 range, which is what is currently being quoted for the apartments that are being planned if this rezoning is approved. In addition to that, I feel like the offers to allow for affordable housing are not being given in consistency with best practice. At some of the meetings, I've heard that those units are going to be made separate from the market rate units and that they wouldn't be built to the same standard. And I do believe that the concerns that folks have for creating a welcoming, safe place to live are really important, because I do think that it is a good idea to develop this area. I do think that we need more legitimately affordable housing, as I am finding through firsthand experience and helping them.
Bailey, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Pete Castile.
Hi, folks.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Pete Castile, 210 South Bend Drive. I appreciate the Planning Commission's work and understand the need for more housing in Durham. However, I object to the zoning change for Aventon Harris Farm and ask the commissioners to vote no. The increase in contaminated runoff, trash, and debris to feeder creeks of Jordan Lake, which is already stressed, will be enormous during and after construction. Current adjacent developments had massive tree clear cuts and caused extensive damage to local woods, wetlands, and creeks. I'm happy to show evidence of that to any planning commissioner who cares to walk Crooked Creek with me. Thousands of daily car and school bus trips will be added, increasing pollution runoff and traffic. Any sidewalks will only connect to Chancellor's Ridge. Walking to shopping would be arduous and isn't going to happen. There's no mass transit, none planned, and bicycling is dangerous, at least. Each resident will need a car. This property will be another climate change concrete heat sink, as the tree canopy will be nearly gone. There will be substantial increased load to local utilities, fire, and police services. All these impacts will be minimized if the zoning change is denied. Can the board tell me if there is any green energy or water conservation initiatives for this builder? Or is this just another standard apartment building with standard building behind it? And with that, I would just say, again, I would ask that the commission vote no. I am not opposed to a housing development here, standard housing development, but I am opposed to this apartment development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gail Schaefer. Gail, please. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. One of my concerns is, first off, I just want to say I agree with the other speakers who have said we're not opposed to development in the area. I understand we need homes. And I know that it's prime property and, it will be developed, but I would really like to see it less dense. I'm a little concerned that we're just kind of going overboard on the apartment buildings. I think there's a proposed complex that will be located less than 2 miles from here by the Streets of South Point Mall that has a proposed over 1,300 apartments. And then we have 751 South again, which is probably within a mile of this one, that I don't know how many housing units over there. I think over 800 multifamily, and then they've got townhomes and other houses. So there's an awful lot of apartments going on. It just seems like this one is not really suited to the area. It's pretty much surrounded by single family developments. And I do have concerns like everybody else about the environment, the infrastructure, the schools in particular. Are they going to be able to handle this? The traffic situation, the intersection at 751 in Fayetteville, which is horrible, et cetera. So again, like everybody else, I think I feel like maybe a less dense development would be a lot better suited for that area. Townhomes, maybe. Yeah, that would be great. And I would urge you to vote no to this particular type of zoning. Thank you.
Ms. Schaefer, you did not state your address when you.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah, Gail Schaefer. I live at 903 South Bend Drive, Durham, 27713.
Thank you. Next, we have Amy Bradfield. Is Amy unmuted?
Hear me?
There we go.
This is Amy Bradfield. I live at 3 Wood Creek Court, Durham, North Carolina, 27713. I live in the hills of South Point, as does several other people that have spoken. And first of all, I appreciate your time and consideration of this matter. I do not support this rezoning request, and I won't waste the council's time since so many people before me have so eloquently expressed why. But we understand the need for increased housing as our area grows, and we would love to see some of it be set aside as affordable. But the density of this project is just not supported by the current road transportation system, the level of our schools, water, sewer, environment. And I like to see growth that is smart and sustainable and planned. And as other people have mentioned, I know you have to look at only the zoning request in front of you, but there are going to be 2 more that are adjacent to this area. So we are talking about 800 apartments feeding into a road that is 2 lanes, 1 each direction, that already backs up during any 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock time period. So I thank you. I hope you will consider making this a less dense, and also if they do go forward, consider making a tree buffer that is a little more than required around that protects both Chancellor's Ridge and what faces Fayetteville Road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Jessica Friedland Lander.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Jessica Friedlander. I live at 610 Panthers Run Drive, which is in Huntington Ridge in Durham, North Carolina. So I had not heard about this like other people, I guess, until something on a social media site. So I live in Huntington Ridge, which is right nearby, but we didn't get anything as far as I know, nor did some of the other neighborhoods. And so I feel like there'd be more people who are interested. I was a public high school teacher for 9 years here in the city. And so one of my biggest concerns always is affordable housing, having taught a number of students who have housing issues and families who face that. My mom recently moved to the area, like someone else was mentioning, and it's really hard to find anything that is available on a fixed income that's affordable. And so while I commend them, I guess, for like 50 affordable housing, I agree with other people that I think apartments that are in the $1,600 to $1,700 range are not what our city needs. We do need more housing, and we truly need housing that people who, like there's affordable housing and then there's also low income housing. And I feel like we need both of those. And it doesn't seem like this is going to be fitting with that. And I just want to express concerns about like bus access, and someone at the beginning mentioned like this is an amenity rich area that people would have access to. And I agree that there are many amenities on this side of town that would be beneficial that are free, but there's also many amenities on this side of town that are incredibly expensive, like daycare, and the stores and the groceries, all of those, there are not a lot of resources that would be affordable for someone who might be moving into an affordable or low income housing situation. Like the daycare prices around here are absolutely ridiculous, even compared to other parts of the city of Durham. And so I just would urge you guys to consider a no on this and maybe some other options for how to develop this area. Other people have mentioned also like school districts. So as many of you are probably aware, districting is being redistricted. And so thinking about how this particular community is going to...
Your time is up.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Britta Kruger.
Yeah, my name is Britta Krüger. I live on 202 Diploma Drive in Chancellor's Ridge. I would like to basically reiterate what a lot of the speakers already said. I'm not being against no development at all. Townhomes, I think, are a good compromise. The problems with the current high density, which, as already was pointed out, is really 800 to 900 units at the end, is traffic. Public transport is stopping at Renaissance. There are no plans to put bus lanes down to either Chancellor's Ridge or the new developments that are being proposed there. There was a comment that people with affordable housing also want to have access to grocery shopping and bars and restaurants and shopping and that kind of stuff. Well, there's not going to be a walkway down to the mall in there. Biking is already dangerous. Traffic is really bad. Making left turns onto Fayetteville from Chancellor's Ridge or right turns from Chancellor's Ridge onto 751 is already dangerous. And everyone who travels 751 basically during rush hours between Renaissance and the intersection Fayetteville 71, it's a parking lot. So I would urge the Commission to say no to the current to the density change, but look at something more lower density like townhomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Drew Gardner.
Hey there, my name is Drew Gardner. I'm from 311 Alumni Avenue in Chancellor's Ridge. One thing that I haven't heard about is the community health. So I'm a pediatrician. I work both inpatient and outpatient setting. And I heard people talk about increased accidents, increased people walking around, school buses and things like that. And one of the major concerns I have is that every day at UNC hospitals, our ICU, including our pediatric ICU and our neonatal ICUs, are full. So this is a real problem if we're thinking about adding more housing than what's districted to. And if people need to go to the hospital, not only are our ICU full, but our pediatric floor beds are full as well. And so for these children who are sick and need health care, I don't think it is a good idea to have more children in a space that's not designed to handle this this amount of people. Thank you. I oppose the building as the building plan as it stands, and thank you for this time.
Thank you. Next, we have Alyssa Trafin.
Hi there, my name's Alyssa Draffin. I live at 303 Alumni Avenue in Chancellor's Ridge. I just wanted to speak to the lack of community engagement comment by the applicant in the development of Aventon Farms. As a member of the community myself, I know firsthand that I did not receive a notice for the last meeting, but moreover, the meetings that did take place often felt like a formality with little interest from the law firm to understand our concerns and input about the sheer volume and density of the complex. So it's been disheartening to see that our community's voices and interests are not being heard or prioritized. And I just wanted to end with saying that I think many of us are feeling disempowered and discouraged from participating in the process because this feels very much like a David and Goliath situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more Anybody else that wants to speak? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. It's also time for us to take our break for the closed captioners. So we will be back at 7:45. Thank you.
If you live near Merrickmore Park, you'll want to mark your calendars now. Local students and volunteer groups will participate in a volunteer day on May 11th from 9 a.m. until noon at Merrickmore Park. The event will mark the reopening of the park's playground and the completion of its new sensory garden. The playground has been closed since mid-April, so the garden could be installed. Ideas for the garden were developed by NC State students to provide a unique sensory experience and more inclusive options for play, discovery, and interaction with nature. It features native plants in a variety of colors, textures, and smells, and imaginative play features that include a nest, butterfly benches, mud kitchen, accessible interactive planters, and natural play elements to enhance the playground area. During the volunteer day, groups and students from Merrickmore Elementary School will install plant bed areas and add beautification elements. More information can be found at dprplaymore.org and on social media.
So let's get to the fun stuff. What do kids, say 5 to 12, get to do at a DPR summer camp?
So we have all kinds of great opportunities. We try and do as many field trips as possible. We have at least a weekly trip to a swimming pool, so the kids have the opportunity to learn how to swim, play and engage with kids. Some kids from their neighborhood, kids that live nearby, and a lot of times kids they've never met before.
Wow,
so
okay.
it really creates some social connectivity for kids. It decreases the amount of screen time that they have, and it shows them different activities that they can do with each other and led by our staff.
Everyone in Durham should be able to find a home they can afford. That's why Forever Home Durham is creating affordable, livable, and inclusive communities for low to middle income residents. From renting to owning, find out how the city is helping more people find homes right here in Durham. Learn more at foreverhomedurham.com.
See a pothole? There's an app for that. Missed pickup? There's an app for that. Need to set up water service? There's an app for that too. Introducing the One Call app. Report your service requests online on your schedule. Just download for free from the App Store or Google Play Store. Then sign up and start using it to report problems, check the status of your service request, or just find out more information. Try the Durham One Call app today.
We, the people.
Nosotros, de gente.
我们人民
Mia Dumaville.
Hum sab log. We the people hold these truths.
To be self-evident that all men
And women are created equal.
and shall be afforded
The inalienable right
to fair housing.
The City of Durham and HUD are committed to ensuring that everyone is treated equitably when searching for a place to call home.
So Patrick. Patrick. Sir. What were you doing in Wilmington?
We had our part.
that I, yeah. Yeah. Yes. What's going on? Not much, man. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here today. How you doing, brother? How you doing, man? Good. Can't complain. Good to see you as well. You know, this kind of. You're gonna mention that I just signed the speaker's list, but I'm not. Well, so I'm the applicant speaking. I didn't sign the speaker's list as applicant. Oh, yeah. It's just a name on there. Yeah. Okay.
Let me know what he says. I hit this.
You broke it.
Good evening. We are calling the meeting back to order. Oh, this broke. We are still in the case of Z22-00054, and now we're opening up the floor for commissioner comments and questions. Commissioner Morgan.
I have a question for the applicant. One of the things is you talk about affordability. What AMI are you looking to propose that for?
Long story short, 60% AMI for 30 years, but Ted, do you have any color add to that?
Yeah, it's a 4% LIHTC application, so the units will be at 60% AMI. And like Patrick said, the lure will be in place for 30 years.
Okay.
We're open to conversations, and we can communicate with community development and staff about using some income averaging and pulling in some lower AMI units. We're happy to do that. We do it everywhere that we work across the city.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to look. I appreciate it. I didn't see it in the staff report, so I was just trying to see what it was. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Also have a question for transportation.
I was going to stay on the topic of.
Question on the report. I was looking at the report for transportation, and I noticed that really there's not a lot of difference between whether we build or no build. Can you give me a little bit more insight into the report itself?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly the question.
Okay. When I look at the report for the TIA or the transportation impact, I'm looking at that when I see both a build option or no build option, and I see most of the intersections don't really change. What's behind that? I know with 490 units, it seems like there would be an impact.
So with most of them, it depends on the traffic that's approaching from the side streets. Most of the traffic from the development will be on Fayetteville Road as the main intersection through. And the further you get away from the site, that traffic disperses, along the roadway network. So you don't see a big drop in level of service. And additionally, the site is not adding trips into those neighborhoods.
Okay.
So those trips do stay on Fayetteville Road.
That makes sense. Are we taking into account also the 751 South, the development that's actually going to go into effect in June 3rd?
Yes, so the TIA did account for traffic from two background developments, one in 751 South, as well as the Courtyard at South Point development that's a little further north.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at that. I'm just thinking with that many units, although there's a lot of traffic already in that area, so I'm just trying to get a good idea. Okay.
Right.
And another question for the applicant, is there any kind of proffer for improvements or any of the extra lane or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are definitely improvements, but I do want to emphasize, if you look at page 4 of your staff report,
okay,
it's important to recognize that the roadway capacity of Fayetteville Road is 14,200 cars. The latest traffic volume is 8,400, so it's only operating at 59% of its capacity right now. But in terms of the turn lane improvements along our frontage, I'll let Earl Llewellyn give a little more detail on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll briefly summarize. Earl Llewellyn with Kimley Horn, traffic engineer. We conducted the study. The summary is actually on the very end of the transportation staff report, but in a nutshell, we're providing both left and right turn lanes at both side driveways. We're committed to installing a traffic signal at the intersection of Fayetteville Road and the western leg of Massey Chapel. There's two intersections, but it's the western leg. There also, someone mentioned the 751 project, which the traffic is included. When we include their traffic, we include their improvements. So when we get to site plan stage, we will see if, for example, if this project goes before that project, we will assess if this project needs to be making improvements at that intersection, or if it's them that's triggering those improvements. Another thing that I would add, as Erling said, we included the Courtyard at South Point. We included the 751 South project. We also included traffic from the South Point Mall redevelopment project.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Real quick question on parking spaces. What's your, what are you doing? How many parks per unit do you have?
The affordable housing section of the development, that's actually governed by North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. They require 1.75 parks per unit, so that's 88 parking spaces for the 50 affordable units. There's no way to vary that through the UDO or through the Board of Adjustment. I think, Ron, for our market rate units, we're like at 1.5, 1.6. Yeah, we're around 1.5, 1.6 if we have to. That can be varied at the Board of Adjustment, but we cannot, anything that's governed by North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, that's etched in stone.
I think pointing out that it's less than 2 per unit across the board, even if you average it, is helpful. And I think that was one of the comments was, there are not enough parks, but that's helpful in this traffic argument that you're reducing the number of cars. And so, there are lots of issues with traffic studies and, we shouldn't get into that right now, but traffic is one thing. So the other comment that I'll make is around climate impact and environmental. I think one thing that we often discount is this current site. I think it was allowed for like 80 single-family residences. What we don't talk a lot about are the greenhouse gases that a single-family residence uses compared to a denser multifamily project. And so as we start thinking about environmental impact and what happens, one thing that should really be considered is how intense, in terms of greenhouse gases, single-family usage is, from energy consumption, manicured lawns. All of those things are bad for the environment. Those are things that you don't have in denser multifamily environments. So the other thing that I really want to commend is this partnership. There should be a white paper on this joint partnership here between market rate and affordable housing developers. This is how we get things done. And also congratulate you on one-upping the previous project with 10.2% as opposed to 10. So, as we continue doing these things, giving examples of how to partner and create affordable housing and density around our community. And our community is broader than the immediately surrounding neighborhood. It's Durham as a whole is the community, which is why you have lots of representation and you come before a broader board, not an HOA. And so the community, Durham, needs affordable housing. This is a great partnership in a way to accomplish that. Density is helpful from an impact and environmental standpoint. It makes things affordable, and it's something that we should be doing more of. And so from a fit standpoint, I think they made some design recommendations to keep these at about 3 stories, pitched roofs. All of these things are helpful to allow these communities to fit in to the surrounding neighborhood. So kudos, hats off to you for this project. Great job. If it's not obvious, I'm in favor of this.
All right. I have a couple questions about the affordable housing. So I understand that it's going to be separate pretty much from the market rate because you're going for bonds and 4%, right? Has DHA already approved the bonds?
DHA has not. We'll be putting in, for us to process an application, we needed to have the rezoning approved this year before May 15th. And so we'll be applying to NCHFA in the open window, and we'll be in front of Durham Housing Authority's board before the end of the year to secure an inducement resolution.
Okay. And then as far as the design is concerned, are they going to pretty much look the same on the exterior as the market rate? Because it concerns me that I don't want people to be like, there's the affordable over there, that it blends in nicely with all the market rate and, it's a true mixed income project.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that we're going to be going in many aspects from a facade design farther than the market rate deal will. So NCHFA's design guidelines require us to build a significant percentage of our facade with brick. You won't, for the most part, see that. Not that the market rate folks are going to use this, but we're not allowed, we won't be using any low-grade exterior facade materials through the hardy board. And we are also committing to, we don't typically do this, but in this case we will be, to be consistent with the market rate portion of the project. We'll be including balconies in our design. But no one driving down Fayetteville is going to be able to tell the difference and be able to say that's cheap and low income versus market rate.
I think the other thing to point out, if I'm not mistaken, NCFHA also requires some green building standards.
Correct.
With their money.
Yep, right? That's exactly right.
Is the market rate going to have any green building standards at all?
Energy Star or something like that? Yeah, well, Energy Star appliances in every unit to make sure that
But no other
power consumption
LEED or any other U.S. Green Council thing for building?
Yeah, at
No.
this point, just the focusing on Energy Star appliances throughout the units.
Okay.
But I did want to emphasize on page 8, all of the text commitments. These apply to both the market rate and the affordable units. So all the building materials, balconies on every unit, pitched roofs on every building. It's uniform throughout the project.
Thank you. Can anyone on staff answer or talk to the concerns about bus access to this site? Nope.
Earlene Thomas, Transportation. There is no existing transit service in this area, and there's none currently planned.
What does it take to get a bus planned to a multifamily development?
So that would come, with the service planning from the transit provider as they look at their 5-year service plans and longer range plans to see, where the needs are and plan their routes.
Okay. How long does that usually take, do you know?
I do not.
I mean, do they wait every 5 years or can they amend it?
They can amend the plan and update it, I believe. I might need to confirm that and circle back with you on that.
Okay. Does anyone also too want to address, because I know it's supposed to be a 600-foot radius, right, in a circle, not just straight when neighbors are informed. So we've heard that time and time again from concerns about neighbors not being informed.
Andy with planning. So the notice is based on the exterior property line. So it's a radius. There's a polygon that's drawn, and if you're in that radius, we have an application online. Go Maps, Durham Go Maps has that tool that will basically tell you who's within that polygon radius from the property line. So that's how it's measured. And if they wanted to go above that, they can input like 1,000 feet, and then it'll generate that list for any applicant looking to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Sorry. No. Commissioner Ballantyne.
Thank you. So first, let me commend you on the affordable housing provision in this project, particularly it being in a different part of the city. So I was happy to hear that. I did have a concern about what one of the people who spoke tonight described as a lack of engagement with the community. Could you speak to that?
Sure, be happy to. I mean, again, I draw your attention to page 8 of the staff report. What we heard as a concern was because this was a development proposed with mixed low-income housing and market rate housing, that there might be an appearance or aesthetics issue. And that's why you see such strong aesthetic commitments on page 8 that apply to every building within the project. Again, as the traffic concerns, as Earl Llewellyn described, we're providing left and right turn lanes so that even though Fayetteville Road is only at 59% of its capacity, the ability for cars to move throughout this section of Fayetteville Road will be maintained because you got left turn lanes and right turn lanes serving this project. And again, we sent out, as I recall, over 450 letters just whatever it was, a month or so ago to allow people to know about what was going on, and Earl Llewellyn was on that call, so we had our traffic engineer, we dealt with the aesthetic issues, and I believe we've done the best we can do, sir.
Attorney Biker, I think from the community standpoint, at least from what I hear, is that people want to be heard. And so I think in large part, the heavy lift is really just the engagement and giving people an opportunity to be heard. Because what I heard tonight was people are not opposed to this project or to development in the area. Development in the area, I should say. Not necessarily this project, but development in the area. Do you agree with that?
I really couldn't speak for the other folks, Commissioner. What I would say is, my recollection is we had the line open well in excess of the time period when people were asking questions. So people asked questions for, say, 40, 45 minutes. We left the line open for another 15, 20 minutes. I always give out my direct phone number. I say, if you are on this call and you wake up 3 days from now and you get another question, my direct phone number is 919-590-0384. You can call that number anytime. I'll return your call within 1 business day. To my knowledge, I have held that promise. I don't know what else we can do, sir. I mean, at the end of the day, it's 12 units an acre. And if you think townhouses are appropriate, that's basically cutting the density in half.
Thank you. One last question. Can you remind me the 5,000 square feet of the office that's planned? What do you have a plan of a tenant or what that use is going to be?
Nothing at this juncture, Madam Chair. It could be some sort of collaborative office space. Could be a neighborhood office for a small business that needs it. But right now, we're following the place type map, incorporating the 5,000 square feet with an office use. And how that turns out, we just don't have an answer for that at this point in time.
I was going to say, you like these projects with No office plans, huh?
I'm sorry?
I'm about to joke with you. I'm out of order. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Bring it back in, Kim. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? None? Ready to move this forward?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we take case Z22-0054, I'm going to butcher this name, Aventon Harris Farm, to be presented to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to move this forward with a favorable recommendation. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron?
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright?
Yes.
Commissioner Chigars?
Yes.
Commissioner McGyver?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri-Williams?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to case number Z22-00059, RP Residential Studio Apartments. May the applicant please come forward to the podium and give a presentation. I'm sorry, city first. Sorry. City. I'm rushing. I'm getting excited.
Thank you. Andy Lester with Planning. This case, Z22-00059, RP Residential Studio Apartments, is a proposed zoning map change. The property is located at 2504 East NC Highway 54 and totals 1.94 acres. The existing zoning is office and institutional with a development plan. The applicant is proposing residential suburban multifamily with a development plan to allow up to 72 multifamily apartments, of which 36 will be affordable. The existing future land use map designation is commercial. The proposed residential suburban multifamily with the development plan is not consistent with the commercial flume. If approved, staff recommends a change to the flume to designate the property as high-density residential. The existing zoning is office and institutional with the development plan. To the north of the site is office and institutional and commercial neighborhood. To the south and east of the site is Science Research Park. The aerial map shows the general location of the project. The site is located centrally between South Austin Avenue and Triangle Drive on the south side of NC 54. To the east of the site is Research Triangle Park, and to the west along NC 54 are commercial uses. The development plan indicates that this is a reuse of an existing hotel for multifamily apartments. Minimum tree coverage and open space are proposed. The access point will remain the same. No, they have the residential. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, let's just reset this for 2610.
Okay. The screen had the RP residential. Sorry.
Sorry about that. We'll start over 2610.
Okay. There's a technical issue. We're doing. Okay. So this is actually Z22-0001, 2610 South Miami Boulevard. The property is located at 2610 South Miami Boulevard. There are 6 parcels totaling 13.63 acres. The existing zoning is residential suburban, 20 commercial neighborhood, industrial light, and industrial light with a development plan. The applicant is proposing planned development residential, 19.284, to allow for up to 270 multifamily dwelling units on the site. The existing future land use map designation is industrial. Should the zoning map change be approved, staff recommends designating the site medium-high density residential on the flume. The existing zoning is residential suburban 20, commercial neighborhood, industrial light, and industrial light with a development plan. The surrounding zoning is mostly industrial light or industrial park, with a small portion of undeveloped residential 20 to the northeast, to the northwest, and commercial neighborhood across Miami Boulevard and adjacent to the south. The aerial map shows the general location of the project, which is in the southwest quadrant of South Miami Boulevard and Park Tryon Court and across from Lunley Road. To the north and west are light industrial sites with residential development to the east along Lunley Road. Now, the development plan shows 2 points of access, one on South Miami Boulevard and the other on Park Tryon Court. The building and parking envelope avoids the wetlands, floodplain, and stream buffer on the western portion of the site. Some notable commitments include 5% of units affordable, 60% AMI households, in addition to a $135,000 donation to the Durham Dedicated Housing Fund, a payment of $500 per additional student from the development, and it also addresses stormwater runoff from a parcel that is not on the site. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with the UDA requirements on December 7th, 2021. 8 community members were in attendance. 4 social pinpoint comments have been received for the case, 1 as a proponent and 3 in opposition. Comments focused on increased traffic congestion. Staff determines this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted ordinance and policies. Except for the future land use map designation of low-density residential on 2 of the 3 parcels, staff recommends changing the designation to medium-high density residential should the zoning map change be approved. This request is in the public interest due to the provision of adding additional housing and particular affordable housing units. Thank you, staff, and the applicant are available for any questions.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I did skip ahead on the agenda. So we are opening up the public hearing for case Z22 0001 2610 South Miami Boulevard. And the applicant can come forward, please.
Good evening. Jared Edens with Edens Investments. I appreciate your time this evening. I know it's been a long evening. For me on this project, I think we have a fairly straightforward approach. When I look at a zoning case or look at a piece of property, what's the highest and best use for the property? And my office used to be a couple parcels up from here. We were there about 10 years. It's a very commercial area with plenty of industrial and retail, and IBM's campus, TW is right there. It's convenient to Briar Creek. It just seemed like a good location for some density. Property is set vacant for 20 years, being marketed as a industrial office space, and it's just never going to develop as that. There's a large office park where I used to be in 2 parcels up that's rarely 100% full, and we just think the apartments were a really good use. We've got the 5% affordable component, which we always try to do. A couple of things I want to clarify. Because it was a mistake on the plan, the presentation referenced $135,000 affordable payment, but our 5% affordable was actually supposed to be in lieu of that. I think we had filed a revised development plan that removed that payment from the cover, because we typically don't do both. You don't make a payment and do the affordable as well. So I want to clarify that. And also on the school's payment, staff had asked me to state an actual dollar amount, not a per student amount. So I think the school's payment is $49,500. That's $500 per student for the 99 students. Just want to clarify those 2 things. We've got the 100-year storm here, even though this area, you could argue, 100-year detention doesn't make a ton of sense with the surrounding uses. Weren't required to do a traffic study. I mean, South Miami is a 5-lane road, bus stops. Very good spot for apartments, I think. So appreciate your time and be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a sign-up sheet for anyone? Okay. Thank you. If there's anyone in the audience that did not sign up that would like to speak, there anyone on Zoom? If you would like to speak to this case, please raise your hand. Click the raise your hand button, and you will be recognized. Yes, please come up. Yes.
My name's Pam Williams, 2130 Adventure Trail, Durham, North Carolina. I would like to request that a proffer be made that on the amendment that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes with mass grading setbacks, which would require a 10-foot undisturbed grading setback with all exterior boundaries. I would like for maybe a proffer to be provided for that. Because sometimes these things pass through before the amendments pass through. And so I would like you to consider that. I'd also like for him to consider a 30-foot buffer in lieu of a 20-foot buffer. As you know, a 20-foot buffer is only 20 feet from the property line to the building. So I would like for them to consider at least a 30-foot buffer, which would include the 10-foot setback. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can commit to what the code requires for buffering and setbacks. I mean, the tree coverage code, I mean, I have some issues with it, and I'm not eager to try to comply with some things that I think is going to be changing between now and when it's approved. But we can commit to the code required buffers and setbacks. I mean, most of your neighbors here are not single-family homes. This is, industrial office parks, things like that. So I don't know who we're buffering against with those kind of uses. So we can just do the standard. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other comments from the public. We're going to close the public hearing and move to commissioner comments and questions. Commissioner Morgan.
I have a question for the applicant. As far as the building envelope for that particular thing, you know that there's that dog park or Camp Bow Wow nearby. Is that going to be kind of away from that? I could imagine there might be some issues there.
Yeah, and I think there's some kind of covenants that goes with that use, with that Camp Bow Wow use. It has a certain possible radius off of it before you can have the apartment building. I seem to recall that, but we've talked a lot with, I actually did work for them, and we've talked a lot with them, and we're glad to have that use. Everybody in North Carolina's got a dog, right? I can tell, so this would be pretty convenient. But,
okay. And another question, given that you're on a transit line, as I did with another applicant, would you be considering a bus shelter or anything?
Yeah, I mean, we could, if transportation requests one, we could definitely allow for it. I know the right-of-way is there. I'm sort of looking at Earlene. I know there's a stop really close where the office park is, just a couple hundred feet up the way. So, but I mean, we're open to that. That's what we want, is our people to be able to.
Okay.
Bus.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cutright.
I like the idea of keeping that 135 in. I think 5% affordable one. Thank you. That's been the standard. I think it's moving, but I think that's helpful. Naturally, I got to ask: is there some more room? Go 7%. Keep the 135 in.
So, I mean, we're learning a lot about affordable over the past couple of years, and I'm going to take some credit. I think we helped start it, the affordable conversation, and I'm glad that it's been, Durham got close to 2,000 units, I think, proffered last year in zoning cases, which is great. But what I have learned is those 1% at a time, they make a big difference when you're calculating it out. So even, you try to get to the 15, but I've had sites with less density where we tried to get to 10 or 15, and we're having to really sharpen pencils. Gear Street across from Walmart. Right now, I'm working through that deal because we did a 15% affordable component on 200 units, and it's lean, and it's tough to finance. So I've gotten a little bit more cautious, to be honest with you, on what we can do. And I know the 5% works and you have a project, but if I did 7, 8, 10, we could approve it in theory tonight, but it may never get off the ground. And it's getting that lean. Construction costs just through the roof, and literally for apartments, and we just can't control them. So 5% is what we're leaning for here. I wish I could do more, and we do when we can, but it's getting tough.
Any other comments from commissioners? Are we ready to move this forward?
Madam Chair, before I make a motion, can we get a recap of some of the proffers? Have we made some commitments there? On the bus stop?
Yeah, so the DPS proffer is $49,500 or $49,500. And there is no dedication to the dedicated housing fund. That's the update.
Did you make any other commitments here?
And if transportation requests a allocation for a bus stop or something like that in front of the site, we could accommodate that, but that's the only other thing we talked about. Right, that's what you get.
Yes, so actually we have a text commitment that covers that for the time of site plan. That's already on this development.
Already in there, okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take case number Z22-01, the 2610 South Miami Boulevard, to be forwarded to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to move this forward. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Chagaris,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri Williams.
Yes.
The motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. All right, for real this time, case Z22-00059 RP Residential Studio Apartments.
Thank you. This case is Z22-00059 RP Residential Studio Apartments for proposed zoning map change. The property is located at 2504 East NC Highway 54, totaling 1.94 acres. The existing zoning is office and institutional with the development plan. The applicant is proposing residential multifamily with the development plan to allow up to 72 multifamily apartments, of which 36 will be affordable. The existing future land use designation is commercial. The proposed residential suburban multifamily with a development plan is not consistent with the commercial flume. If approved, staff recommends a change to the flume to designate the property as high-density residential. The existing zoning is office and institutional with a development plan. To the north of the site is office and institutional and commercial neighborhood. To the south and east of the site is Science Research Park. The aerial map shows the general location of the project. The site is located between South Austin Avenue and Triangle Drive on the south side of NC 54. To the east of the site is Research Triangle Park, and to the west along NC 54 are commercial uses. The development plan indicates that this is a reuse of an existing hotel for multifamily apartments. Minimum tree coverage and open space are proposed, and the access point will remain the same. Notable commitments include commitment to 36 affordable units and construction of a bus pull-out and concrete pad or a bus shelter adjacent to the site subject to Go Durham and Go Triangle. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on September 1st, 2022. 2 community members were in attendance. No social pinpoint comments have been received in relation to the case. Staff determines that this request is inconsistent with the commercial future land use map. Staff recommends the flume to be changed to high-density residential. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted ordinances and policies. And the proposal is in the public interest due to increasing the supply of market rate and affordable housing options in the city of Durham. Staff and the applicant are available for any questions.
Thank you. Applicant, please come forward.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm Howard Partner. I live at 2110 Woodrow Street in Durham. So the building that we're looking at, the old Extended Stay America Hotel, was built as an extended stay hotel so that the individual hotel rooms are actually quite a bit larger than a typical hotel room. They average about 550 square feet. So the primary change that we're requesting is a rezoning to RSM so that the change amounts to the length of occupancy of the people living in the building. Formerly as a hotel, people were staying there anywhere from 1 or 2 weeks to possibly as long as a couple of months. And with this zoning change, we will be able to provide permanent rental housing, typically with a 1-year lease, and half of the total units will be affordable housing, designated as affordable housing. So we'll have 36 affordable units and 36 market rate units. In terms of physical changes, we're really doing very little. We're not expanding the building, we're not changing the parking lots, and we're simply adding a couple of bicycle racks and some recreational open space activities. There'll be no other changes. The existing landscape is mature, and we may be replacing a few trees, and that's about it. So if we have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. We have some people signed up to speak. First, we have Joe Nanny.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Joe Nanny. My address is 205 Oak Park Drive in Chapel Hill. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of 2 Triangle Drive, which is the parcel right around catty corner. And my client is opposing this rezoning request because it's not consistent with the character of the neighborhood. As you heard staff say, it is a commercial area. It is not residential. Importantly, if there was no affordable housing, and let's understand, everybody understands we need affordable housing. If there was no affordable housing, this would not meet the UDO because there aren't enough parking spaces. But if you're going to have affordable housing and you're going to put it in this location, you're going to have cars. There are no services anywhere near this proposed area. It's a mile to the nearest grocery store. It's 8 miles to the nearest ER or urgent care. Quite simply, it doesn't fit the character of what's there. It's not consistent with the future land use map. Importantly, the only transportation that's reliable are the buses, and they come once an hour. And if you look this afternoon, which I did, at the Go Durham website, and you try to see when the next bus is, it says there was no service. Now, I don't know if that's a glitch in the software or if there really wasn't any bus service. But the proposal to put affordable housing out in the middle of nowhere where there are no services, there's very little transportation, there's insufficient parking under the UDO for any other use is not appropriate, and we ask that you deny the request. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Bob Mora.
Good evening. My name is Bob Mora. I own the building and the business next door at 2410 and 20 Highway 54 East. I'm here to be the keeper of the history and raise concerns about parking. I've owned the building and the property for almost 30 years, and it's been operated as several different iterations of the hotel since, I've owned it, since it's been there. And my concern is for the parking and the safety issues that we've had over the years with the residents. regarding the parking and some of the issues, to the previous speaker's point, you have to walk to 54 and 55 to the closest grocery store. And what that has yielded in the past is a littering of shopping carts that literally the people bring their groceries and shopping to and dump on my property. I've had to add security cameras because I've had lots of theft, lots of drug use in that area. And it just, there are a lot of concerns. I will say, since the motel closed, as it most recently was almost a year and a half or so ago, all of our issues, including employees being afraid to go at dark to the parking lot, which abuts their property, just because of security issues from the residents there. And
thank you, sir.
Parking was an issue with just 1 or 2 residents per room, and to think that you're going to have 4 to 6 people in the same number of rooms.
All right, thank you, sir.
Parking is an issue.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next up, we have Larry Booth.
Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing me. My name is Larry Booth, 100 Ash Place, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I'm here with my wife, Vicki. We own the property adjacent to the property, which used to be the Extended Stay America. We're an opponent to this being rezoned. Each room of that hotel, when it was designed back around 1998, was designed for really a single person, for a business person coming to RTP to make calls on businesses there inside the park. That worked well for a number of years, but it's not designed for a family. They're asking for 72 motel rooms. My calculation is, and what I see on the internet, each room is about 350 square feet. If you Google the address, you'll come up with a Zillow listing. This is the room we'll see. There are 35 pictures. This is one of the pictures. The tax records show that the building has 38,000 square feet. If you divide that by 72 rooms, it comes out to 527 feet per room. That's not counting the lobby, the hallways, the stairs, the stairwells.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
I asked the commission not to rezone it because it's a danger to the community. The electrical system's designed for one person in each apartment.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Charlotte. I can't read your last name, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Weaver. My business is at 2501 East NC Highway 4, directly across the street from the proposed property. I'll keep it short. I would like to echo the sentiments of the other citizens that spoke on this. Mr. Mora is correct about the crime being non-existent now that it's vacant. The police and/or fire department were probably called 2 to 3 times per month because of some issue that they had, and that's with full staff, 24/7 there. There were issues. So the other problem I have with this is it's not adequate for families, especially with children. The front entrance is probably 100 feet from a 4-lane highway. They can't stand out there and wait for a school bus. It's not safe. This area is not meant to be residential. It's commercial, it's corporate, and it's just not adequate for families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience that has not spoken that would like to speak? Yes. You'll get your chance.
Hello, Katie Ross, 8135 Lowell Valley Drive, Bahama. And I don't know anybody involved in this, but this is the exact kind of development I think should be happening. You take an existing structure and improve it and repurpose it, for, in this case, for a very good purpose, to house some people, give them a home that maybe can't afford what we think of as, conventional apartments or condos. And I don't know what this presumption is that this is going to be high crime people at all. To me, this is what we should be looking for. I think they're doing, hopefully going to do something similar to this with the old North High School. You take that property, build there. You don't have to take out any forest. It's to me, it's win-win. So I just want to voice that concern, and I think what this gentleman is doing is a very good thing, and I'm sure he will make all the improvements necessary to make that a desirable place to live. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the Zoom participants now. Once again, if you wish to speak, please click the raise your hand button. And we have Mimi Kessler.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Mimi Kessler. My address is on record, and I live in the city of Durham. I want to echo what the last speaker said. I think this is a very clever idea to recycle a building, and it would be likened to studio apartments. I'm not sure that anybody would have a family in a studio apartment, but maybe if you just need a shelter, it would be better than nothing. I also think that having the affordable housing component in there provides for proximity for low wage earners to convenient jobs in Research Triangle Park. They could probably, even if there's not transportation, public transportation, they could probably bike over to their job. I would only ask that the applicant evaluate the building for environmental conservation. I suspect that it could probably use better insulating and other things that would be better for energy consumption. And since he doesn't have to do really anything about the exterior of it, in terms of putting in landscaping, perhaps he could focus on the internal infrastructure of the building to make it more energy efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other? We'll close the public hearing now. And what should I? We'll close the public hearing now and move to commissioner questions.
Madam Chair, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I do want to thank you for what you're doing in this area. I know just a little bit about RTP. I spent my daytime there. So RTP is changing. Our foundation has a $2 billion bet that RTP is changing, an investment in housing at the corner of 54 and Davis Drive to the tune of $2 billion for mixed use. So what we know of RTP and our granddaddy's RTP is not RTP moving forward. The other thing in the day-to-day in my conversations with owners, excuse me, business owners in RTP, corporations in RTP, there's a real concern for how the people that work in facilities in RTP can afford to live near RTP. So they don't have to live 2 hours away from RTP and come to RTP to work. So I commend you for what you're doing. I think it is absolutely a need, and I think it will be a huge benefit to the Research Triangle Park and to the area. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Cutright.
I want to echo Commissioner Trapp's comments. Great work. I love the reuse of the building. Other people have already made the comment on the assumptions that have been made about both crime and families. These are studio apartments, just like any other studio. No one's moving a family into a studio apartment. It's atypical. And then as far as parking, I'm sure he's worked that out, and he's to code, and staff is comfortable with the parking scenario. So great work. I support this project.
Commissioner Morgan? No.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I also kind of echo some of the same comments my colleagues have. I think I would ask the applicant to consider just some improvements. I know with longer-term rentals, I think there probably is a lot better in curbing crime or whatever, given it was more transient before. I could see that there's some concerns by the property owners around you, but if there's ways to kind of work together in curbing that, that would be a good thing. But I applaud that it is 50%, and I wish every applicant would bring that.
Any other commissioners? No. I just want to say there was a comment earlier that said there was not a grocery store within a mile. Per the definition of USDA, if a grocery store is not within 2 miles, that's considered a food desert. This is not in a food desert, so that would not raise a concern. And additionally, a studio apartment means no bedrooms, right? Or you're going to have 1 bedrooms. I just want to clarify how many bedrooms are in a studio for those that don't know. Can you come up to the podium, please?
It's a single bedroom, kind of a bedroom, kitchen, living room combined.
Everything together.
Yes.
So usually there's 1 person in there. And
typically 1 or 2.
But no children.
But not a whole family, certainly.
And per code, there is a limit on the number of people that would be allowed to live in a studio apartment, correct?
Correct.
And you would have management that would assure that leasees would adhere to those.
Right. Well, everyone would be signing a lease, and it would be a long-term, a regular 1-year lease. And so as part of the lease commitment, they would be restricted to a certain number of people.
Right. And I'm just saying that usually when you have a management company, they assure that the person that signed the lease does not have unauthorized people living in their units.
That's correct.
There would not be overcrowding in those units.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions you want to address that were raised?
I would just say that the concerns with crime and people being afraid to be in the area, at that time it was largely a transient population, and what we are proposing is a permanent housing, and so I think those situations should alleviate themselves, and if they don't, then our management will be responsible for making sure that we don't have hazardous or dangerous situations for anyone who is in the area.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Ready to move this forward?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we take case Z22-00059, the RP Residential Studio Apartments, to be forwarded to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Cutright to move this forward in a favorable recommendation. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Chagaris,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri-Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Next, we're moving into the public hearing for the text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, case TC 22, I think that's 5 zeros and a 4 after that, phase development and tree preservation.
All right. Good evening. My name is Robin Schultz. I'm a senior planner and arborist with the Planning Department. This evening, I'm presenting information about a proposed Unified Development Ordinance text amendment, case 22-00004, phase grading and tree preservation.
Excuse me 1 second. If we're going to have conversations, we need to move out in the hallway. Sir? We need to move out in the hallway if we're going to have conversations. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so the why of this text amendment, as Durham continues to see an increase in the amount of large residential developments, there have been repeated concerns from residents, board members, and staff, such as issues with erosion control, especially for large tracts. We've seen an emphasis on tree replacement rather than tree preservation, and we've seen large residential neighborhoods with little to no topographical character and/or poor soil health. So we're attempting to tackle this through a three-pronged approach with changes to 3 main articles within the UDO. First is Article 8, Environmental Protection, creation of a tiered system of tree preservation and phase development, addition of incentives for tree preservation, and inclusion of the compact neighborhood tier for those sites which are not zone design district. Next up is Article 9, which is the landscaping and buffering standards. Increase the current buffering standards so that any residential development which masquerades will now have to provide a buffer with an opacity of 0.6, which is approximately 30 feet. And then so the last prong is Article 13, additional subdivision requirements. We will be establishing a new section 13.6, phase development, which creates a maximum cap of 50 acres for any singular phase, and denotes that lots in previous phases must be stabilized before any new phases begin. This section establishes other phasing requirements, which will be covered later. Additionally, as a result of public input, we've also made changes to Article 7, design standards, which I'll cover in a later slide. All right, so the proposed tier system that I mentioned before in 8.3, the things to think about with this one are that it focuses on residential development. It has the ability to utilize, the ability to utilize tree replacement still exists, but preservation is incentivized. It promotes smaller phases of grading and more distribution of canopy coverage. It also includes incentives for affordable housing, varied housing types, and further environmental protection standards. And so the way that it breaks down is that for projects with phases that do not exceed 35 acres, these shall be required to have 20% of tree preservation. Projects which include one of the incentives above can also utilize 20%. For projects with phases 35 acres or greater, shall be required to have 30% of tree preservation in each phase, which exceeds 35 acres. And so each option includes the ability to utilize tree replacement if tree preservation is not possible, though the amounts of tree replacement are higher for larger phases. The tables underneath both options depict the required tree replacement for each level of preservation. So as far as visual examples, in example 1, the parcel is 100 acres. Each phase will be 20 acres and will therefore be required to have 20% tree coverage. 20% of 20 acres is 4 acres, so 4 acres of tree preservation per phase. In the second example, the same parcel is 100 acres. 2 of those phases will be 35 acres and 1 will be 30 acres. Since phases 1 and 2 have 30%, phases 1 and 2 will require 30% of tree preservation because they are 35 acres or greater. This is approximately 11.5 acres of tree preservation per phase, and phase 3 will require 20% of tree preservation, which is 6 acres. So the main takeaways from the examples are that larger phases will require more overall tree coverage. And as a reminder, tree coverage functions as a sum of both preservation and replacement. In example 1, the smaller phases amounted to 20 acres of tree preservation, whereas in example 2, the larger phases resulted in a total of 29 acres of total tree preservation. These examples don't include tree replacement, but remember that the amount of required tree replacement is always more than what is required with just tree preservation. We've also made a slight change to the required project boundary buffers. When residential projects utilize mass grading, which is 4 or more acres at one time, the project boundary buffers required will be updated from 0.4 opacity to 0.6. Currently, the UDO only requires this for residential development in the suburban tier. The new text amendment will expand this to projects in any tier that propose mass grading for residential projects. So 13.6 is a new UDO section to be established, which will denote the additional requirements for phase grading in subdivisions. The main takeaways are that no phase can be greater than 50 acres. Each phase shall be able to stand alone. This is similar to existing language in the UDO regarding phasing. And note that some plans will only have one phase. There are additional provisions within the section, but I'm not going to read all of them. But they relate to the specifics of phasing, infrastructure, tree preservation, and erosion control, ensuring that everything or each phase can stand alone. So lastly, in response to public input and ongoing concerns regarding the impacts of grading on neighboring properties, we've added a new UDO section to the design standards called grading setbacks, which will be section 7.9. So when projects utilize mass grading, an additional 10-foot no grading setback shall be required from all exterior boundaries of the development site. For projects which grade but do not qualify as mass grading, which is to say grading of less than 4 acres, they shall provide a 5-foot no grading setback. The exceptions to this are grading for trail construction, utilities, access, infrastructure, or code-required plantings. And that is all I have for you. Thank you, and staff is available if there are any questions.
Thank you. We don't have a sign-up sheet for this, just, or do we? You're hiding it. Okay. All right, we're going to open up the public hearing and proceed to take comments. The first person on the list is Cecilia Joseph.
Hi. I'm wondering how this process works because I'm from South Durham, and we...
State your name and your address. State your name and your address, please.
Oh, Cecilia Joseph. My address is of record. I live in Parkwood. Yeah. Is that it? Anyway, we were never informed, though we were told there was a little sign at the first one at Barbie Road in 54. And it's just like, we've been inundated. I've counted, there's 6 or 7 communities all around Parkwood now. They flooded our lake. We finally got them to, just after we had drained it, we got them to, help with that, but it's never been the same. And the thing that I hate is the clear cutting. And it's just all over the state. And like in 2018, when they built all of those communities in about 1.5 to 2 years, the traffic is terrible. I hate to see anything else coming up there. And Parkwood, some of the main streets, like Sedgwick, where I live on, we call it jokingly Sedgwick Racetrack. There's just, it just, I don't know, I hate to see a tree go, any tree. And they just, everywhere I went, there was just mountains of wood. And I would like to see more of this affordable housing like that man suggested. I thought, great, that would be great for me. If you get people 55 and older, I don't know how much they're going to be partying, but maybe I could be wrong, you know. So that's about all I have to say. It's just, I want to be heard. Like, when things, one more thing, when things are going up in neighborhoods, put it on TV. All you have to do is call up the stations, and you can put it on TV, you know, or some obscure internet site, the PIN or whatever. But
Thank you, Ms. Joseph.
Free preservation.
Next, we have Katie Ross.
Some of my friends here will be speaking with far greater expertise than I am on this topic, because a lot of this language is very technical. Any improvement is welcome, that's for sure, so we like that. The one thing I would just like to say as a sort of a concept is I don't see why we're constantly having this admission that we have to sacrifice the environment for affordable housing, that these two things are opposed to each other. And what my thinking is, necessity is the mother of invention. If you have clear rules limiting the amount of takedown of the trees, limiting the grading, the housing part would start becoming more creative, like we have seen, utilizing existing structures and footprints more and more. That's what, in my mind, should be most encouraged to preserve the environment. Just real quick, there was a meeting a while ago, public meeting. Scott Whiteman was speaking at it. I don't know whether it's here or the city, but he said the future projected population growth of the Durham area can be housed within the current urban growth. We don't need to keep taking down the forest all around the perimeter. That's all I'll say. Just firm rules, and we've also seen with the developers today, they won't do, in many cases, anything that's not absolutely required. So as our leadership, anything you want done, you have to make it a requirement and part of the UDO. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Donna Steinbeck.
Thank you. Okay, the arrows. Okay. Hello, I'm Donna Steinbeck at 4825 Jimmy Rogers Road in Durham, North Carolina. Okay. First time working with this, as you can tell. So we are grateful for the draft UDO of setting up a max for land distribution phases. However, we feel that the max is too large. We have been and are proposing a max of 20 acres per phase since August of '22. The max phases of 20 acres is like the ordinances for Charlotte and Wake Forest, and Cary has 25 acres. The mass grading and phasing of the large acreage causes severe land disturbance that removes more of the natural vegetation that absorb and slow the water and soil runoff. It is a major issue with Triassic soil. It's a major issue, and That's the area that a lot of us have been representing. A good bit of Durham is Triassic soil. The larger size phases without much vegetation result in increases of the speed and the total volume of the eroded soil runoff, like the tomato soup for the project that damage watersheds, the creeks and lakes, wells, and septic lines. These phases need a proper sizing and also need a proper stormwater plan and commitment and basins. The basins are failing now. Larger phases are likely to increase the amount of concurrent blasting close to the same time, and then the amount of soil that gets carried into the sediment basins to be later pumped into the creeks and then to Falls Lake. So we have a massive cycle going on here. Now, reducing the phases would help significantly, and that's the reason some of our neighbors have decided to do that, and I think that's a strong argument for let's look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, how do I close this?
Thank you, Alex. All right, next up we have Pam Williams.
Our presentation flows in order. Can we go in the order of our presentation? Because we're all one PowerPoint.
So you still would need to state your name and address, and you still will have 2 minutes each.
Yes.
All right, so if you just want to line up already, get already lined up and just come one after the other, that would be great.
I can't see. Hold on. All right. What am I missing?
Let's see, it's not up on the screen.
Oh. How do I get it to just go?
Y'all need help?
Yes, Alex, give me just a second. Make sure. I don't want to touch anything. I'm scared I'm going to touch something. Just so it's ready to go. I got it that far. Thanks.
Is this the right one?
Yes, that is. That's perfect. And are we good to go up there? Everybody ready? All right. My teammates and I have studied this tree preservation for months, and have progressed through the phases as they have progressed. We appreciate the efforts made to protect the trees, which are so important to the ecosystem. Mass grading, clear cutting has taken a toll on Lick Creek, with Samantha Kropp's most recent article stating that 3,900% above state standards was measured in the creek last week. 3,900% greater. The charts show a couple scenarios of how these two parcels can be subdivided into phases, as was just presented over there. And Pamela's going to explain those even more. But what I want to show you in this is we did like the presenter did. We divided into phases, or scenarios, scenario 1, scenario 2. But the first presenter tonight with Infinity Road said it perfectly. He presented tonight and said that just putting a buffer around the creek would meet the minimum he has to meet of 30%. He wouldn't have to do anything else. So we're not sure how this is going to help the tree save when meeting the minimum that they're asking to be met, 30% if you're more than 35 acres, 20% if you're less than 35 acres. Just by putting a buffer around the creek, you've met his minimum. Do you see what I'm saying? We need more than a minimum to save trees, because what we're doing is tearing up the environment. After studying these scenarios for hours, we don't see where there's really going to be any tree save. We've got Howard's Place here. We also did a scenario I sent you in an email last night of another parcel, and we go through these. But as a teammate reminded me, yeah, 50 acres is great if we do it in phases, but it's still not going to save enough trees. We can still not clear cut. We can still clear cut, but we're not saving the trees. Riparian buffers and such, these will be counted in the double counting, and so therefore no extra trees are really being saved. Meet your minimum buffer, and boom, you've met the requirements that are being set up. It's not helping. When you can go to Lick Creek and see the levels that we saw last week with Nate Baker, you will see we are destroying this creek. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if y'all can, my name's Pam Williams, 2130 Adventure Trail, Durham, North Carolina. And I don't know if you could see the pictures of how we had it divided, but we did take into account and said, okay, we have concerns about who's going to divide this, because there's so many ways you can divide it, and the developer comes out, again, without having to provide any additional trees, creating heat pockets. Like Aventon Road and also 1102 South Miami Boulevard, where they provided like almost 30% of tree preservation. The only tree preservation they had was within the boundary of the creeks, okay? Now we've created a hot pocket right in the middle, especially on 1102, where there's nothing but homes, sidewalks, streets for 20-some acres. And so how is that benefiting the community that's going to be living there? They need trees. I don't care if we have 10% affordable housing. Affordable housing needs trees. And in my opinion, we don't need to be playing off affordable housing to providing more trees. And that's what, if in this write-up, if they provide affordable housing, then they don't have to provide the higher percent of trees preserved. Everyone needs, and whether it's a affordable housing community or not, everyone needs higher trees, more canopy. We need to reduce the heat pockets. We need to provide the land. And again, my question is, who is going to determine how this land is phased? Because it can be phased so many ways that they could actually come up and not even have to provide what they're providing now, except for 20%. And also, if a developer comes in, it's going to cost me more to clear cut this. You know, I mean, not that to clear cut, it's going to cost me less to clear cut it, and therefore we want to clear cut everything in here because I need the dirt over here. Well, everybody can use that excuse. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can't really see the pictures. Is this Tom?
We have Tom Freeman now.
Sorry, she's fixing the slide.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Freeman, 1818 Southview Road, Durham, North Carolina. Before I get into this, I'm taking up my time, but I'm going to make a personal invitation to each and every one of you to visit Southeast Durham. I invite you to see the mess that we're in down there. See me or Miss Andrews. We'll make sure you get a guided tour. Promise to treat you with respect and kindness. What you're seeing here is an active site in Triassic Basin soils in Durham, now it was in Durham City. What you're seeing, and first, before I really get into this, we like the mass grading setbacks that are proposed. They will require a 10-foot unobstructed graded setback from all exterior boundaries. So what we're seeing here is not that. What you're seeing, the construction fence is, in essence, the private property line that delineates the development from private property. You can see it was graded up, it was denuded of vegetation up to the line. What you just can see on the right side is a complete stripping and the denuding of all living vegetation on that site. Sites stay idle for sometimes years. That Triassic Basin soil erodes into those basins. They're pumped out after 3 or 4 days into the very creek they're designed to protect. Next slide, please. I want to point out that the rapid eradication of trees is polluting our creeks and lakes. But for, listen carefully, but for the mass grading, we would not be having that. The mass grading, exposing these sites, is allowing tons of soil to pour into our streams and creeks. Remind you that upcoming hurricane season only exacerbates this existing problem. Come visit us. We'll take care of you.
I'm Rebecca Freeman. Okay. I'm Rebecca Freeman at 1818 Southview Road. Thank you for listening to us tonight. And no, this is the very last thing on the agenda, so we'll be through very soon. I want to call your attention to a recent article in the Chronicle, the Duke Chronicle, written by a student in the field of environmental science and public policy who is questioning things that have to do with urban heat zones. And extreme heat was a causing of weather-related deaths in the United States, and high summer temperatures can trigger excessive heat stress and exhaustion, among other serious issues. It's called urban heat island effect. It occurs when land cover, vegetation, and street canopy, which cools the other areas, are sparse to limited areas. And in an EPA study done in 2018 found that there are a number of neighborhoods in Durham that have these heat islands, and there are right now considered to be down in the city area, further into the city of Walltown, Line Park, and Old East Durham. However, as people move out and we have affordable housing out in the community, we're going to be seeing these urban heat zones too, because in the past, the temperatures for the city and the county have been very different in the summertime. The city is hot in the summer, and the county is, and the rural areas are cooler because of the tree canopies. Now we're having this mass tree grading and and small tree replanting to, even though they can replant them, they get little twigs that take forever to get up enough to provide any shade. That does not work. One of the issues we have too is that the amendment pits tree preservation against mass grading. Why not have two different ones that address mass grading? And how about looking at and really consider a mass grading ordinance in Cary, Charlotte, and Wake Forest even, that is 20 to 25 acres, and have that as a standalone thing. The developers are not here to save trees. They're here to maximize their investment. And so this ordinance needs to have separate areas for mass grading, for ordinance, instead of proffering things. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Next, we have Michelle. Is Michelle still here? Scanlon? No. I think she is gone. All right. Everyone in the gallery has spoke. And do we have anyone on Zoom? We have Mimi Kessler, who's raised her hand.
Hi, this is Mimi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to talk about some very specific things about this. On page 4 of the document, it talks about the 5-foot setback. And I just want to say that that's not going to be enough for a neighbor's canopy tree. And we have a problem with, the neighbor trees are just getting ruined and by the grading, and I don't think that 5 feet is enough. I like the 10 foot, and I think we should stick with that. And on page 5 of the document, it says that anything less than 2 acres is exempt. Well, 2 acres in the urban tier is a lot of space, and I don't think that it needs to be exempt. I think we need trees everywhere. And then section 8.3.1, and then it says C, but I don't really think it is a C there. .4.C.1a. I, 1I and 2I, it says that affordable housing is exempt from tree coverage requirements, which I think is environmental discrimination. And I think we should be ashamed that we're even suggesting that. There is a community input item, the very last one in the document on page 14, and it talks about runoff. I don't see how anything in here is going to help the person who doesn't have mass grading going on, but has grading on the adjacent property, and they leave their downspouts, I'm almost finished, the downspouts open to just run the water over the surface, and that is just completely unacceptable. I don't see that that's being addressed. And
all right, thank you, Amy.
I want to know what stabilized means. Thank you.
Can staff just make a clarifying comment?
Sure.
So to Mimi's point, affordable housing developments are not exempt from tree coverage. If you utilize affordable housing within that development, you can use the percentage for a smaller phase, but there is no way in which affordable housing exempts you from having to do tree coverage. No affordable housing will have any tree coverage less than anything that is required within the Unified Development Ordinance. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. All right, we are closing the public hearing and opening up for commissioner comment.
I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Morgan, yes.
Go ahead. I have a couple questions for staff. In looking at this, I'm trying to understand a little bit better, is with the phased approach for mass grading, if a parcel is greater than 50 acres, do they have to split it up into phases?
Yeah, yep.
That's one question. The other one is, it seems like there's kind of a loophole, is if they break it into multiple phases, you know, kind of as the example that's been shown, is there a way to kind of have less tree coverage if they're breaking it into multiple phases that way?
No, quantitatively, 20% of 16 small phases is still 20% of the whole. Does that make sense?
And if it's greater than 35 acres, they are required to do 30%.
Within that phase, correct.
So is there a way that they could actually preserve more trees if they break it up in larger clumps or?
Yep, so it provides that sort of flexibility so they can decide to grade in larger phases, but then they also have to preserve more trees. But depending on if the site is more clustered or compact, it might make more sense. So they have those two options, which is why it's sort of separated into that tier.
So their trade-off is have more phases, maybe more expense, possibly more expense versus less phases, but more acreage and more tree save.
Correct.
It's kind of the economics behind it. Okay, I'm just trying to get it. Just trying to wrap my head around it as far as that's concerned. Some of the folks have made some comments. I'm also kind of thinking this is a pretty important thing. I do think that we should move, in some ways, do something versus nothing. I'm kind of on the fence for it, but I'm also looking to try to provide more input from the community as well, because this is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and so we've had public input meetings. Many of these folks were here and provided input. So yeah, that point is well taken.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
I have a question. So the opacity has been upped to 60% from 40%. When is that measured, in summer or winter, or are we just planting all evergreens?
So opacity is measured essentially by, so when you go into the project boundary buffer standards, it requires a certain amount of deciduous deciduous evergreen shrubs, et cetera. And so the idea is that once it's fully leafed out within a certain period of time, that they will meet that opacity of being 60%.
So summertime.
Correct, yeah.
We leafed out.
We can't really accommodate winter. I wish we could.
Yeah, so 60% opacity at winter would be like 120 in the summer.
Correct, yeah. Mostly just trunks.
All right, any other comments, questions from commissioners? We're voting on this tonight, right? Yes. Ready to move forward?
Sure. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take text amendment 22/04, phase development and tree preservation to be forwarded to the City Council and County Commission for a favorable recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Zuri Williams to move this forward to both the city and the county with a favorable recommendation. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Chagaris,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Trapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
No, I don't think this issue is ripe.
Commissioner Zuri Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
Thank you. We don't have any old business to come before us. Just a reminder, we do have a second meeting this month on the, is it the 23rd? 23rd. So please be here. So we have a quorum. We don't have to have 3 in June. All right, and a motion to adjourn. Do we have to move to adjourn? It's been moved. Second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Trapp and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Adjourn.